I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is, based on my clock here, it says 6:36, but if you look at your cell phone, I think it's a couple minutes sooner than that. Welcome tonight. I'm Councillor William Riley. I'll be the chair of tonight's meeting. I will note for the record, today this is meeting number 7, and it's Tuesday, October 15th, 2024, and yeah, welcome everybody. I do have to mention to members of the public that we recommend that all cell phones, pagers, and or PDAs are turned off or at least put to silent. Additionally, for your information, please be advised that this meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded and will be available on the township website. So, I'll mention that any comments can be made from members of the public for a matter that is on the agenda by advising the chair during the request to address an item on the agenda section. The public may submit written comments for matters that are on the agenda to jpaylove@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 on the day the meeting, or before or on the day of the meeting, for consideration by the committee, and comments received after 4:30 of the day of the meeting will be considered at the following council meeting, and comments submitted are included in the record. And I've already mentioned this meeting's being live streamed, so this was talked about before. So this meeting's also being live streamed as well as recorded and available on the township website. And yeah, so we'll go forward to the land acknowledgement statement. The township of West Lincoln, being a part of the Niagara region, situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Township of West Lincoln, as part of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. So at this point, I'm going to look around the horseshoe here to see if there's any pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest on tonight's agenda. Not seeing any. So we have 3 public meetings tonight. The first public meeting is going to be 739520 Road. It's a zoning bylaw amendment. So I'm going to jump right into that one. And so that's this one here, I believe. Okay. So I got to state that this is a public meeting to consider an application for a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Ross Robbins, our agent, on behalf of Evelyn and Jeffrey Duck, applicants 4739520 Road, file number 1601-00424. I must state that the Planning Act requires in Section 3412 and Section 39 that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the application. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendment, and any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. I do also have to state, in accordance with Planning Act and the minister, the applicant or specified person, but public body or registered landowner of any land to which bylaw amendment will be applied, who made oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to a council meeting prior to the adoption and or passage of the bylaw may appeal the bylaw amendment to the Ontario Land Tribunal. It's a very long sentence. All right. So I'll ask the clerk to please advise the method and dates by which the notice was given to the public.
Proper notice was given by way of email circulation to agencies and mail circulations to all residents within 120 meters of the subject property on September 11th, 2024. Public notice was also posted to the subject property, the township website, and the township administration building on September 11th, 2024.
Thank you. So I'll ask the manager of planning, Garrett Burma, to please explain the purpose and reasoning for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you, and good evening, members of council. An application for a zoning bylaw amendment has been made by Ross Robbins on behalf of the property owners of 739520 Road, being Jeffrey and Evelyn Duck. In August of last year, the Ducks applied for a natural severance to the Ontario Superior Court of Justice to naturally divide their property using the Beds of Navigable Waters Act. The court granted the natural severance based on North Creek passing through the property, resulting in the bed of the creek being owned by the Crown and a 7.6 hectare parcel of land on the north side of North Creek and a 10.88 hectare parcel of land on the south side of North Creek. The township zoning bylaw does not recognize parcels created through natural severances as lots for the purposes of building. So the Ducks, together with Mr. Ross Robbins, have applied to recognize the parcel north of the creek as a lot and permit a dwelling and other buildings to be constructed. The northerly parcel is currently vacant and has been used for cash cropping. The subject property is within the prime agricultural area of the provincial policy and provincial planning statements, and is also located within the good general agricultural area and natural heritage designation of the township's official plan. The township's official plan supports and protects the long-term agricultural use of these lands, as well as the natural heritage features along North Creek. The applicant has also indicated that they would like permission to operate a business on the property as an on-farm diversified use. The township zoning bylaw requires that in order to operate an on-farm diversified use, the lot must be a minimum of 10 hectares in size. As the subject property is less than 10 hectares, the applicants require an additional amendment to the zoning bylaw to address this, which they've included. In an effort to ensure that agriculture and the natural environment remains protected, the applicants have completed a farm business plan, a planning justification report, and environmental impact study. As this is a zoning bylaw amendment, a statutory public meeting is required, and at this point in time, no public comments have been received. Comments have been received by both the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority and the region of Niagara, citing no objections. However, the region has requested a holding provision to ensure that the recommendations of the EIS be completed. The applicant is in attendance this evening, as well as the owner of the property and their planning consultant, to provide council and members of the public responses to any questions that you may have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So that being said, would the applicant or their agent like to come forward and speak to this in any capacity? You don't have to by any means. This is just your one opportunity to speak to it if you'd like to at this point. So I'm not seeing some head shakes. Okay, so that's fine. So we'll go to public submissions. Are there any oral or written submissions from anyone present in the meeting, either in person or on Zoom, regarding this proposed zoning bylaw amendment? And so I do need to state that I'd like to stress that this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public that are in attendance at this meeting would like to make their comments or provide a written comment, should you do so now. And if they're attending virtually, and would like to provide those comments, you can do so by using one of the two methods. So maybe before I go into that, I will start with the virtual aspect there. So I'll go to IT to see if any of the individuals virtually would like to do it. You just raise your hand. I guess maybe I do need to read that if they're virtually. So it goes here. If you're using a smartphone, you're just going to raise your hand, and through the controls that can be found in the Zoom options displayed on your screen. Or if not, if you called in, which I don't see any phone numbers in, they would just hit *9. So I'm not seeing anyone in the gallery, or the virtual gallery. Anyone publicly that wish to speak to this bylaw. So we're here tonight for 3 public meetings, but we're speaking specifically to this particular public meeting, which is related to the application we're just talking about. So if there's nobody here that wants to speak to it, that's fine, but I do have to ask. So not seeing any, I'll go to members of committee. I do need to read my little script here. So, do any members of the committee have any oral written submissions on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? And I see Councilor Rayner and Councilor Trombetta.
Thank you. Through to Mr. Borma. You say the stand from the Township of West Lincoln is the Beds of Navigable Waters Act is not recognized as a severance in this township, correct?
Through the chair to Councilor Rayner, the township zoning bylaw defines what a lot is for the purposes of zoning. And under that definition of lot, there's a statement in that bylaw that says that if a lot is created through the beds of navigable waters since 1979, it does not constitute or does not meet our definition of lot. However, I believe if they did create it through a natural severance through the beds of navigable waters, they could still sell that, and that could be transferred, but for the purposes of zoning, our zoning bylaw doesn't recognize it as a lot for building.
Through you, Mr. Chair, back to Mr. Borma. The region and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, they supported it, even though they, I am sure, realized that the township, I gather, is not supporting this?
Through the chair, township staff have not come up with our recommendation at this point in time, but based on previous natural severances that have come before this committee, have been supported by staff based on each merit of each application. And that's why planning staff are also evaluating this one based on the merits of this application. And the applicants have, in their application, shown a strong connection of how they're going to continue supporting agriculture, even though this natural severance has occurred. And they provided that through their planning justification report and their farm business plan.
Okay, through again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Borma, then shouldn't the definition be changed for the township to say the township does not recognize or support, but should say rather it could possibly recognize and support depending on the circumstances? Because as you said in the past, the circumstances have been opposite to what the direction of the township is, and yet they granted it. So therefore, a precedent has been set in the past?
Through the chair to Councilor Rayner, even though it's specifically stated, I believe, in our zoning bylaw, and I can pass it off to the director as well to provide additional information, even though it's stated in our zoning bylaw as something that we don't recognize, that doesn't stop people from continuing on to do that in the township, and then coming to this committee and council to seek permission to recognize it as a lot. One of the main reasons why we believe that is in our current zoning bylaw is to ensure that when owners do divide their property through this Beds of Navigable Waters Act, which is not a planning act application, so it has nothing to do with the planning act per se, but to still ensure that when they are going through these processes, our agricultural lands are still being protected, and that they're not being done in a way to create non-agricultural lots. But maybe I'll pass it off to the director to provide additional response.
Thank you. Just further, I guess, the way it's written, we recognize the lot as being conveyable, but not buildable without going through a planning approval process, which requires the approval of this council. And the reason it's been set up that way is because of one particular instance that some of you will remember near Caister Center Road and Concession 2-3, where there were like 15 lots created on a farm parcel without any input from the township. So township has drafted this revised language to ensure that council is satisfied with protecting the land for agricultural purposes as part of the approval process.
Last question, sir. May I ask why this has not gone in front of the Committee of Adjustment first? Or did it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it didn't need to because they went to the court and a judge issued the decision that it was a natural severance. They wouldn't have got an approval through the Committee of Adjustment.
Oh, sorry, I understand that, Mr. Director, but I was saying in further to what they want to do with this land, taking that to the Committee of Adjustment. You can't touch the Navigable Waters Act. That's got nothing to do with us. But the direction they were going in, that process didn't go through the Committee of Adjustment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, it never went through the Committee of Adjustment process since they're really, I don't think this would meet the test of minor necessarily, so a rezoning is the right avenue to process this application.
But the bottom line to all this is they're still protecting the agricultural land, and that's what you stated, and that's what I support, so that's important. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Maybe just turn off your mic. Thank you. Councillor Trombetta?
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Chair Riley. Yeah, we've seen these come more than once to council. As long as it's, like the director and manager also stated that it's protecting agricultural land, I don't see an issue with it. I do have one question through you, Mr. Chair, to manager of planning. You said that there's a proposed business being proposed. What, I didn't get the whole, you were so flowing so good, Garrett, I didn't get the whole spiel of it, so if you can.
I'll go slower next time. Through the chair to Councillor Trombetta, Mr. Robbins has requested to locate Robbins Electric on the subject property. Not the whole business because most of the employees work off-site, just a few amount of trucks and just a little bit of space inside one of the outbuildings that he's proposing. And our bylaw does allow for basically contractors' establishments limited in size and scale. but it only allows them on agricultural properties that are a minimum of 10 hectares.
Correct.
And since following the natural severance, the portion north of the creek, which Mr. Robbins intends on owning if he doesn't already, is only 7.6 hectares. So he is requesting that this on-farm diversified use, this Robbins Electric contracting use, be permitted in a limited scale on the parcel north of the creek in connection to the agricultural activities that he's proposing on that piece of land.
And that's coming at a later date through you, Mr. Chair. Is that what you stated? Thank you. Yeah, again, I know this is something that's been coming up to council on multiple occasions. Trying to get homes in areas where they're not allowing us to get homes. I'm not opposed to that at all. So that was just my comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the committee have any other comments? Okay. So I kind of skipped over a part I probably need to read, so I will ensure I read it. I think that this is probably one of the only chances you'll get to speak to this, that the OLT may not consider comments made during any other council or committee meeting. So again, I'll extend that because I didn't put that out there. So if anybody hasn't spoke to it, that wishes to speak to it, this is your time. Otherwise, you may not get another chance to speak to it. That being the case, I'm going to move forward, not seeing other hands up. That I do have to advise you that a technical report is being considered by the committee this evening, and that once committee and council has made a decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of its passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, we ask that you email the township clerk, Justin Paylove, which is jpaylove@westlincoln.ca. And then lastly, anyone who's interested in observing council and/or committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on a mailed notice and potentially miss the opportunity to attend an applicable meeting. It is suggested that you watch the township website for the posting of agendas to review items that will be discussed at council and/or committee. The agendas for the meetings that are posted on the township website are after 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meeting, and additionally, meeting schedules are also posted on the township website for the public to view. If you wish to receive those notices by email, it is suggested you contact our clerk to advise of that request, and including your email address along with your mailing address and phone number. So this public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is concluded at the hour of 6:51. So we'll move forward to the second public meeting. So that one will be dealt with later for the technical report aspect of it. All right. So we will move to the next item, which is a public meeting to consider an application for a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by William and Kathy Vitucci for 5547 Regional Road 20, file number 1601-00724. Must state that the Planning Act requires under Section 3412 and Section 39 that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect to the application. The purpose of this meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public, regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, and that we stress that no point, or not at this point, no decision has been made on this proposed amendment, and any comments will be taken into consideration by council and their consideration. So I do also have to state that in accordance with the Planning Act and the ministry, that the applicant or specified person, public body or registered landowner of any land to which the bylaw amendment will apply, who made oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to council prior to the adoption and or passage of the bylaw, may appeal the bylaw amendment to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And so I'll go to the clerk to notify, or please advise the methods and dates of which the public meeting was given.
Proper notice was given by way of email circulation to agencies and mail circulation to all residents within 120 meters of the subject property on September 11, 2024. Public notice was also posted to the subject property, the township website, and the township administration building on September 11, 2024.
Excellent, thank you. So I will go to our manager of planning, Garrett Barima, to explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you. An application for zoning bylaw amendment has been submitted by William and Kathy Vitucci for their property located at 5447 Regional Road 20, just east of the hamlet of Bismarck. In July of this year, the Vituccis received conditional approval for a surplus farm dwelling severance from the Township's Committee of Adjustment. The committee approved the severance, including a condition that the applicants rezone the remaining agricultural lands to agricultural purposes only to preclude any future residential uses as required by both the current and future provincial policy statement. The Vitucci's have therefore applied for a zoning bylaw amendment to change the zoning on the remnant agricultural lands from agricultural to agricultural purposes only, and to rezone the severed residential land to a rural residential zone. There are two exceptions also requested for the agricultural land, and that is to permit a minimum lot area on the remaining agricultural lands of 23 hectares, whereas 39 hectares is required, and to permit a deficient lot frontage of approximately 8 meters. A special exception is also being requested on the rural residential zone to recognize the deficient lot front yard setback for the existing house of 5 meters, where 15 meters is required. The subject lands are designated as prime agricultural lands in the provincial policy and planning statements, as well as designated as good general agricultural in our township's official plan. And this application conforms to the requirements of the provincial, regional, and local planning policy. No public comments were received at this time as part of this application, and the Region and Conservation Authority have indicated they have no objections. I'm not sure if the applicants are here this evening. Oh, yes, they are. And I'm guessing they're here just to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll ask, would you like, this is your chance to speak to this, if you'd like to add anything you feel hasn't been covered, or if there's anything you'd like to state, or if you just want to. Okay, thank you. All right, so I will actually just ask other members of the public if there's any oral or written submissions from anyone present in this meeting or online here regarding this proposed zoning bylaw amendment. I do need to stress that this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. Therefore, if members of the public that are in attendance at this meeting would like to make comments or provide at least written comments, they should do so now. So, not seeing or hearing anyone. Kevin, can we already have it up. You can read my mind. Okay, so I'm going to just continue to read, see if it gives anybody else time to think. Once you've been acknowledged to speak, we ask that you unmute your microphone. It is important to provide your comments now if you're not done so already in writing or verbally, as the OLT may not consider comments made during any other council and or committee meeting. Is anyone virtually interested? If so, you just use the Zoom controls, raise your hand, or hit *9 if you're on the phone. Not seeing any. So I'm going to go to members of committee here. Do any members of committee have any oral written submissions? And I do have to note for you guys as well that you are to make your comments now, as the OLT may not consider comments made at any other council and or committee meeting. And yeah, so what, we got any members of committee? Not seeing or hearing any. I will note that the difference in this public meeting to last one was council will be debating a technical report, and the previous one, this one will actually be a recommendation report. So that I must advise that a recommendation report will be considered by committee this evening. That once committee has and/or council has made a decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of its passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, we ask that you reach out to and email our township clerk, Justin Paylove, at jpaylove@westlincoln.ca. I won't bother with that. I already read that. So we will go, I'll say, at this point, this public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is concluded at the hour of 6:57 p.m. So that is the end of our second public meeting. Yeah, I did. I did. I said, any members of committee? And I looked around. And you guys had your head down. Did you have a question? No. Okay.
I just don't want to be left out.
Well, all right. A little confusion there. All right, so here's our third public meeting. Here we go. So this public meeting is a meeting to consider an amendment to the Township Zoning Bylaw Amendment and the Township Animal Control Bylaw. File number 1601-00224, Backyard Chickens. So I do have to state that the Planning Act requires in Section 3412 that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of this amendment. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the proposed zoning bylaw and animal control bylaw amendments. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendments, and any comments received will be taken into account by council and their consideration. I do also have to note that in accordance with the Planning Act and the ministry, the applicant or specified person, public body, or registered landowner of any land to which the bylaw amendment will apply to, who made oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to the council prior to the adoption and/or passage of a bylaw may appeal the bylaw amendment to the Ontario Land Tribunal. I will go to the clerk to please advise the method and dates by which notice of the public meeting was given.
Proper notice was given by way of advertising in the local newspaper and postings on the township website and in the township administration building on September 12th, 2024.
Excellent. So I will go to our senior planner, Susan, to please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw and animal control bylaw amendment.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, Committee, and Council, and those members in the public at the gallery today. I'm here to present the technical report that pertains to this proposed bylaw for the backyard chickens, as well as the proposed amendments to the animal control bylaw that supplements the regulations for the Association for the Keeping and Maintenance of the Chickens. Please note that this bylaw was drafted from research and with conducting correspondence from various representatives from the poultry industry, with representatives from OMAFRA and area municipalities on how they have and have not addressed backyard chickens within their municipality. Additionally, this was supported by the initial public feedback obtained at the February 12, 2024 public hearing, as well as the online survey data. As presented in the report, the proposed bylaw is an attempt to gradually roll out the permissions for backyard chickens on lots in the township, primarily in the rural hamlet areas, that have a minimum lot area of 0.5 hectares or 1.2 acres and zoned as agricultural, rural residential, or low-density residential R1A. There is a maximum number of chickens set to 4 hens and no roosters, which is based on the research that was consistent with most of the municipalities, and this is to manage the potential issues pertaining to noise, odor, and attracting predators. The proposed setbacks and location of the coops and the runs, again, is another attempt to permit the backyard chickens as an accessory or as subordinate uses to the zoned agricultural, rural residential, or low-density residential that are on the smaller lots. From a policy framework, the permissions and proposed bylaw aligns with the provincial, regional, and local policies that support agriculture and agri-food systems. The purpose of the meeting this evening is to provide another opportunity for additional input and comment on the proposed bylaws. Staff notes that we have received additional comments from the public that may have not necessarily been included in this report, although staff is welcoming additional feedback and will be reviewed and assessed for a future recommendation at another meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll go to, I guess I'll just make a statement. So we did receive, I guess, some emails after the 4 p.m. Friday, so the clerk had advised me that those will also be part of the consideration that will eventually come forward. No decision tonight's going to be made. Again, this is a technical report, so anybody who thinks the final decision is being made tonight, that is not the case. I heard that there's some misunderstandings in the community of what was actually happening tonight. I will ask that, considering the topic, there's, I think there's two very important voices of this particular item, and so we do ask that when you come up to the podium to speak, please be respectful. They're our neighbors, they're our friends. We can agree to disagree, but we can be respectful towards each other. I do ask that there be no cheering or booing or anything like that. This is more of a preliminary advice here. Just again, it takes a lot of courage to come up and kind of share your view and your perspective. And we want to make sure that we're embracing that. I did also want to note that when you do come up, we do need you to state your name, and we're going to ask for your street only. You don't need to give us your exact address, but just so that we can have that, and consistently what we do with all of our public meetings as well. So at this point, I did, for those maybe who are watching virtually, I'll come to you guys last if you guys are going to speak to this. We did, to kind of help be respectful of everybody's time and be efficient, we're able to take some people who kind of signed up in a speaking order. If you've changed your mind, you don't want to speak, you can easily just say pass when I call your name. I'll start by calling numbers, but if you forgot your number, I can let you guys know the name I have here, and then from there we'll go and see how this conversation goes. So I'll start with number one. Who has number one? All right, sir. So again, you're just going to come right up. You're going to state your name for the record and just have to give your street.
Before I start, I would just like to make sure that you have all received my handouts that I emailed earlier
Yes.
about the backyard chickens.
Yes, actually, and I will also note that this is not a chance for people to make a presentation about anything other than this. They're providing their comments about this specific bylaw. That first public meeting was kind of like that was kind of what that was about. So I'm not saying that that's what you have planned by any means. I just want to make sure it's clear for everybody that this isn't a chance to make a case for it entirely. We got to speak specifically to this bylaw under this planning meeting, this proposed bylaw under this planning meeting. So if I notice you guys are getting off track a little bit, I'm going to have to steer you back to kind of stay on topic, because that stuff won't be captured. All we can capture is what's actually on the table before us. And so anyways, but I know I've received your emails, and so that's not a concern by any means. And anything that you've also sent to the clerk will be public record. So that will be at the following meeting, once all that information, whatever the recommendation comes either in the next month or two, all of that stuff will be included in that as well.
Okay. Thank you, councillors. I have requested this opportunity to address council in regards to the West Lincoln Smithfield bylaw 2023-54, addressing the issues of livestock animals in residential neighborhood backyards, which is linked to the zoning bylaw number 2017-70. First of all, I would make sure my concerns regarding this bylaw is not personal in regards to attacking a neighbor by dealing with issues with the bylaw. On June 7th, 2023, a neighbor installed a chicken coop. In talking to the neighbor, I informed the bylaws of Smithfield indicated that they could not have chickens in residential backyards. On June 17th, a chicken wire pen was installed. I immediately sent her a text indicating that, yes, in fact, bylaws prohibited backyard chickens. It was at this time we registered our first concern report with the Township of West Lincoln. Soon after, a bylaw officer came by and informed her that she would have to get rid of the chickens, and several days later, the chickens were gone. At this time, we felt that the issues regarding backyard chicken was a closed issue. On June 27th of 2024, the same neighbor installed yet another chicken coop, etc. And within a few days, 2 chickens in her backyard, again, even though it was against the bylaws of Smithville.
So I'm really sorry, and I do have to interrupt you, because I need you to speak specifically to this bylaw.
Yeah.
And I realize you're explaining a situation that isn't necessarily directly related to this particular bylaw. This particular bylaw is related to the zoning aspect of areas that are already zoned for that will be applicable to it. So I just need you to kind of steer your comments and questions to staff who can take that in. So this isn't, I get where you're going with it, and I certainly hate the idea that I have to interrupt you there. I just want to make sure that if you have a question or a concern, if you could be a little bit more direct with that to staff, that way that is actually what's captured and that's what they'll take back, or if they can provide an answer, they'll provide an answer. Again, this isn't a chance to, like, unfortunately, I'm restricted to what's before us. I can't let, otherwise everyone's going to come in, and this is where we get into that presentation of my concern or my perspective. We really need to stay just on track with this particular bylaw. That will come at another time, and you will have another chance to speak at that. But at this point, this is just about this bylaw.
Okay, so I can name the reasons for concern, correct?
Correct. Yeah, so that's exactly it. And these are you providing your comments to staff, and if there's a question, hopefully they can answer. If not, they'll take it back with them.
Okay then. The first concern is the World Health Organization top scientists say that there's an enormous concern about the risk of spreading H5N1 bird flu to humans, as the virus potentially spreads from bird to bird and then bird to mammal. One small child in Australia has actually been infected by the flu, and we still don't have a vaccine for it. The next point is predators are another concern we have in regards to backyard livestock. We have lived in Smithfield for more than 13 years, and we have noticed a significant increase in coyotes in the back ravine. Several years ago, a coyote caught a rabbit and tore it to bits in our own backyard next door to where the chickens are now residing. Frequently this past summer, we were swimming in our pool in the evenings. We can hear the coyotes as close as our own back fence. Numerous neighbors have also indicated that they have not only heard but seen the coyotes closer to our community. The next point is, property values are a concern to all of us in the community in order to extract the maximum value for your home. When the day arrives when it's time to move, we do not feel that having a home with chickens residing in backyards will help resale purposes, hence devaluing your property. And currently in the Niagara region, the police is the largest single line item to keep us all safe. We do not wish to burden the police force with nuisance calls from adherents for backyard chickens, loose chickens, odors, noises, proper disposal of waste. These types of complaints would fall to our lone bylaw officer or animal control. Increased complaints mean more manpower, which equates more cost to the taxpayer. In order to find out our community felt about this issue, I started a petition on September 2nd to October 3rd. The petition was limited to our neighborhood, which includes Manorwood Drive, Brookside Terrace condominiums, Oakdale Boulevard, and Forest View Court. I didn't hand in the breakdown of the petition earlier, so do I hand it out now, or does it come later, or?
It's in our package. So
Not this one here.
is that a revised one, the one you've already submitted to the clerk?
This is not, I've never given a breakdown.
Here, we'll have the clerk come over and. Sorry, I didn't have the mic on there, so I just mentioned that the clerk's gonna take a look at that, and that will be included in the record, I guess. Perfect. Is there any other questions or comments?
Pardon?
Do you have any other questions or comments? Sorry, just.
Oh, yes, I have more
Okay,
comments,
okay,
yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. When I was collecting names for our petition, numerous neighbors were concerned that the livestock bylaw is to be changed. The next thing you know, we'll be having ducks, turkeys, goats, llamas, and chickens, which most residents on my petition do not want to see happen. A number of communities ran trials projects on chickens in backyards, and a numerous number have retracted it now, and chickens are no longer allowed in backyard residential areas. Examples: Toronto, Ottawa, Mississauga, Burlington, and some communities in Niagara Falls. Actually, it just happened when I went home today. They just, on Good Morning America, they have just had 5 more human bird flu cases reported. In conclusion, the saddest thing that is happening as a result of this issue is that neighbors are turning against each other. A neighborhood that used to help each other all the time is no longer doing it, and people are afraid to speak their opinions because they don't know who might be listening. And it's gotten so bad that I have received serious threatening texts myself. I would like to thank everyone for the opportunity in speaking this evening, and I would wonder if anyone has any questions and would like to have any clarification.
Okay, thank you. I think we're good for now. If anything comes up, we can ask you. Now, I did note, and it's my fault, I was going to try and keep people around 5 minutes, but I gave you closer to 10, so I'll extend that to everybody.
Yeah.
That was my bad there, so I'll make sure that everyone's treated fairly. But thank you for your comments, and then I'll go to our number 2. I have a list of numbers here, so if number 2 can come up here. Pardon me? I know, well, that's my bad. So again, I just need you to state just your name and your street. You don't have to give a specific
Dora
address.
Pavlidis, Manorwood Drive.
Perfect, thank you. And I will let you know about 30 seconds before. I'm going to give you 10 minutes as well.
I timed myself,
Perfect.
so we're good.
Perfect. Prepared.
So,
Thank you.
good evening, members of the council. I'm appearing before you to speak on behalf of many members of the West Lincoln community, in particular residents of Smithville. I had an opportunity to read the draft and felt disappointment, to say the least, when I saw that one of the stipulations was that the property be 1.2 acres or more. This restriction would, in essence, exclude almost every resident in Smithville. This draft states this stipulation is to address concerns for noise, odor, disease, and potential for attracting rodents and predators. These are valid concerns if we were talking about 20 chickens or more. It's already been proven how residents on smaller properties can own microflocks such as this successfully by many municipalities where this program has been implemented. In fact, it's already been proven in West Lincoln. I can tell you with 100% certainty that there are dozens of homes in Smithville who've had chickens for years. The fact that they have gone unnoticed is evidence in itself that these concerns are unfounded and proof that people are responsible owners and have their pets properly cooped and cleaned. Food is kept in the coop and any other food sources are removed. I had actually a lady tell me that her neighbor called on her, the bylaw on her to tell to say that she had chickens because this woman apparently had mice in her near her home. Well, bylaw came, they verified that she did not have any chickens, and nobody in the neighborhood actually had chickens. In fact, no one anywhere in the neighborhood had chickens. Mice and rats are everywhere, whether people like it or not. They are attracted to food sources such as bird feeders and places of shelter. They are in and around everyone's sheds, decks, and even barbecues, nibbling at food bits on their grills, in garages where household waste is kept, places where fertilizers are stored, in cities and small towns alike. We live in a town surrounded by farmland, fields, wooded areas, and commercial chicken farms. There are rats, chickens, or not. It's hard to understand how the soft clucking or sound of a hen laying an egg is any different than a dog that barks, or the train whistling as it passes through town, outdoor parties and shouts and laughter, music played while outside in their yards, lawnmowers, leaf blowers, weed whackers, snow blowers, and the list goes on. We live in a community. We cannot expect absolute silence. Do I need to address the smell the smell in Smithville in the summer? Probably not. Again, we are not talking about 40 chickens or sheep or cows or pigs. We're talking about 2 to 4 chickens, no roosters. If these concerns are such an issue to people, why don't we prohibit dogs who defecate and pee on burned lawns, or cats that are allowed to roam and destroy gardens? Prohibit bird feeders and bird houses because they attract mice and predators. We don't because it's unreasonable to penalize the majority of pet owners who abide by the rules. Avian flu has been mentioned. Absolutely, it's a concern to commercial chicken farmers. Avian flu came to Canada in December of 2021. At the height of the spread in 2022, there was 43 cases reported in Ontario. 9 of those were non-commercial outbreaks, and all were from rural farms. The disease was identified, education and biosecurity measures were put in place, and in 2023, only 5 outbreaks were reported in Ontario. Only 1 was non-commercial, which again was not from a residential small flock, but a rural farm. This year, only 1 case has been reported in January in Ontario, and the origin was from a commercial farm. So I am not sure how we can still put so much weight on fears when this data is readily available on the official Government of Canada website. And I actually have a printout here of all the stats since it's been since it started up.
Okay, you can give that to the clerk afterwards.
Sure. The whole experience has been an eye-opener. I posted online last week on a few social media groups regarding this amendment and canvassed 2 nearby streets myself. I spent only a few hours on actual canvassing, and overwhelmingly, with the exception of a handful of people, everyone that was home signed. Many other signatures and messages of support came from people contacting me online and responding to the points. And also I have an additional petition here that came in afterwards, and there were other people who actually helped me. I had very, very little time because I was out of town.
That's fine. Now, I do want, just not to interrupt your momentum there, but again, I do have to stress, like, if there's questions or comments about this particular bylaw, like trying to do my best, you both kind of, person before you and yourself are kind of a little bit outside those lines. If I could just steer you back into it, that would be great.
I'm going to go on.
Thank you.
So I won't talk about all of the messages that I've received about
And
hatred and comments.
if you have it in your speech there,
I do.
by all means, you can share that with the
Beautiful.
clerk. And same
Okay.
to the gentleman before, you can share it with the clerk afterwards. But again, we want to stay
Sure.
on target.
Just to give an average 40-pound dog produces about 3/4 pounds of waste. The average daily waste of 4 chickens is about 1/4 pound that is cleaned far more often than the dog feces in the backyard that is collected once a week. That attract flies, does not compost, and and it smells. If we like chickens, suddenly we're labeled dirty and irresponsible, or that we like rats and flies and smell. A 4x5 coop runs at a cost of about $4,000. This is a hefty cost for a couple of chickens, a couple of eggs a day. These are our pets, and if they give us an egg or two a day, it's a bonus. The fact that so many households already have backyards in Smithville is proof that people are responsible, and the lack of reported increase in the noted concerns is proof that they are unfounded. I'll tell you this, I know that there was some mention about coyotes. I sleep with my window open. I have never heard a coyote in our backyard, ever. We ask that you at least consider a pilot project that is inclusive of Smithville residents. Kitchener has a fantastic bylaw written up that addresses all these concerns, which we could mimic. In conclusion, the chicken owners of Smithville would like to come out of hiding and be allowed to the same rights as the more fortunate who can afford an acre or more lot. Taking all the facts, not beliefs and myths and fears into account, it would be extremely prejudicial to exclude the residents of Smithville in this bylaw on the basis of their economic status, should this draft be approved as is.
Perfect. Thank you. And so you don't have any questions for staff at this point? That's just, you just want to make comments?
Questions?
So again, to be clear, like any questions you have about the particular bylaw that's before us, this is your chance to ask staff or provide that kind of context there.
There was a mention about that there had been surveys or information that had come from other municipalities, and that the 1.2 acres was sort of following in line with some of these other municipalities. The only one, I don't know of any ones that actually have that large, a stipulation on it. Mississauga and Toronto obviously did not. None of the Orangeville, Kitchener, Waterloo, all of the ones that I've seen don't have, and I think there was only one, and if I'm not mistaken, it might be Welland or one of the ones nearby. It's the only one that I know of that actually has that stipulation. Mississauga actually just stopped their pilot project. They terminated it. Not for any reason because of any concerns. It was simply that only 6 families had applied for the permit, and those 6 families were having issues finding vets in the area and also winterizing their coops, so they just decided to scrap it. Toronto, the same thing. They scrapped it because it was in the height of the avian flu in 2022, and not that any backyard chickens actually got it, but because they were concerned about the spread, they actually terminated it at that point. There was any other municipalities, I don't know that they've actually terminated it for any reason.
So are you seeking clarity of which municipalities possibly they're referring to?
Yeah, like it'd be interesting to know what.
So I'll go to our director, if that's stuff you have readily available, or if you want to follow up afterwards, but I think that's the clarity they're looking for.
Thank you.
I'll have Susan respond.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the size requirements, Haldimand County is one of the municipalities that we were looking at in terms of the size. Another thing is just in terms of the lots in the smaller agricultural plots, looking at the averages, and again, there's been no formal recommendation. This is something seeking additional feedback, so something that staff can consider. Another thing in terms of the research that was conducted is some municipalities also have licensing. That's something that we weren't looking at from a staff's perspective, just due to resources and other administrative concerns as well. So that's where some of the feedback and information came back.
Licensing is an awesome, I think that would be an
Thank you, Susan.
addition to it, absolutely. That way you know who's got what, and, there's nobody flies under the radar, as they say.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Did you
Yes, so
want
if you
me
can bring that up here, our clerk will grab that for you, include that with the minutes as well. While he does that, I'll go to whoever has number 3. Perfect. And then, again, just need you to state your first name and your street.
Hi, my name's Jen. I live on McLeod Road.
Perfect, thank you.
I'm going to read an article that I've written multiple times with this.
So before you read the article, I need to be clear again. Does it specifically relate to this particular? Because you have to. I'm governed kind of by the Planning Act and Public Meeting Act. So again, it has to be particularly about the bylaw that's before us, and not anything that's about just a general support presentation. Okay. So if I feel that you're going off, I'm going to have to stop you and kind of bring you back. Okay. Because again, that's just it's not. My hands are tied in terms of what this meeting is about. So this meeting is specifically about the bylaw that's before us, which was identified as those A, B, C, and D.
Correct. Okay. So being part of the larger Niagara region, which is made of a world wonder waterfall, Niagara Escarpment, and the largest set of freshwater lakes, a unique banana belt growing agricultural condition and Carolinian forest rarities surrounding this area means that agriculture, farming, and all that it entails will always be a part of the community. Banning or being incredibly restrictive on simple, beneficial, inexpensive livestock such as chickens has many detriments to people who live and want to live in a region that by its natural design will never be able to escape its ecological state. Chickens are domestic and cannot survive without care. People who have this small cost, easily managed pet or animal have no benefit not to do so. Unlike the over $100 million spent on dog and cat control, along with the extensive damage to persons, livestock, communities, and infectious vectors by stray, wild, and feral dogs and cats, chickens are simply unable to become such an issue. In other countries and studies, allowing 2 hens per household, even in small yards and areas, household waste can be reduced by over 50% to the benefit of their local area. They also bring under control and are part of control for bugs, mice, rats themselves by their very presence. Their waste matter is easily dealt with and with a benefit, unlike dogs and cats, with heavy transmission of parasites and disease to other animals. Having chickens means caring and protecting them, and complaints that wildlife will be drawn to them is exaggerated because our entire region by design supports fox, coyote, and small creatures. And its main area, it has multiple farms, greenhouses, bush, and the surrounding lands being wildlife habitats. Chickens actually help observe and control issues, benefiting the community by more people being aware and resolving those issues rather than just trying to wish for them to be out of sight. St. Catharines downtown has deer, coyotes, fox, and the GM rat infestations, even with the ban. Niagara Falls, as well as having rats from construction causing havocs for areas. But we are allowed, I'm from Niagara Falls, I'm allowed to have chickens. I'm allowed to have 10 chickens in a 50 by 75 foot lot. That's quite a bit more than even what you're proposing, but I would like to see that for smaller yards, the number may be lessened rather than working on a 1.2. The problem of dogs and cats is so extensive, there's an entire job segment, regulations, and enforcement for them. Barking, waste, roaming, filth, leashes, overbreeding, feral animals top housing and community complaints, but are allowed. Chickens do not draw or require that attention because they do not survive without purposeful care. This is also the cost-effective husbandry versus rabies. Mass poultry farms have their own regulations and procedures that contend with infections of biohazard controls and have been in place from history and will continue dealing with the wild bird protocols and infestations and biohazards and flus that have taken place. Yard chickens will not have an impact on poultry farms more than a wild sparrow or a goose, but there is serious biofail unless there is serious biofails in their contingency. Also to note, multiple of the commercial farming is supported by government. If they ever do have, unlike someone who has some other form of pet, a commercial poultry farm, or any kind of other bird, that they are recompensed for every bird that they have to put down. Europe has tried that. They have done multiple culls when it comes to H1N1 or the flu, the bird flu, and it still has not stopped it because of the wild transmission. We have a huge migration path, and that's simply from Canadian geese. I would purposely hope that you would allow 2 hens even for townhouse size yard because not everyone will choose to do so. In Niagara Falls, the world renowned allows 10 with an inset of coop, which makes the current suggestion much, much more restrictive. Instead, banning them is taking enjoyment, teaching of empathy, life cycles, pest control or awareness, respect for food, and can reduce food waste, especially through green cycling or recycling. that local taxpayers bear for processing for the future. We are landmarked by agriculture, with greenhouses everywhere and with our entire agricultural community surrounding us. Yard chickens do blend right in, helping to stay eco-friendly, green-focused, pest-controlled, while making residents who have them happy within our gorgeous Carolinian climate region. Please reconsider your restrictions. Some of the comments that I would like to make out of this is I actually manage almost 300 units in multiple cities, including commercial. I deal with pest control. I deal with people. I deal with animals on a regular basis. A chicken is recommended to have a 3x3 space per chicken. That's all they need. A $20 bag of feed will turn around and keep them for like 6 months if you have 1 or 2 of them. It's a food security issue. We're coming up to millennials who absolutely disagree with banning what you do in their yards and not being able to have backyard chickens. It gives people a purpose, a happiness, and people with pets do end up doing better, which does better for our communities. That is something I see almost every day. When it comes to coyotes and different things, we have the Coyote Act in Niagara Falls, and that does regulate down to bird feeders and things that attract, and it can be quite a significant penalty for that to happen if you have backyard chickens. It's of no benefit to you to feed wildlife whatsoever. We can have the same problem with cats and rats. And rats, you look at St. Catharines, you even look at Niagara Falls, homeowners have a 50% rebate program. The problem exists. I know they're doing a massive amount of construction. The overflow that has come out from that needs to be dealt with, it would not matter. They will go after cat waste. They will go after dog waste. They will be in your garbage bins. They will be at our grocery stores. We're not having more people managing that portion of a rodent control is a benefit to everyone. In Kitchener, they actually encourage classes. They're encouraging backyard chickens. And I know I have yet in my 6 years, and again, almost 300 units, multiple properties, I've only had to deal with chickens once. I deal with dogs almost every day. I deal with cats almost every day. But I know that a little tiny chicken that will come when it's called, go to bed at night, is nowhere near as disruptive as working beside the dog park. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we will go to contestant number 4. I got 5 here so far, and then we'll open it up. All right, so again, I just need you to state your name and your street.
Dwayne Muse. Is this my mic here?
I think it might be to the one to the right.
Oh, all right. Dwayne Muse, Wallace Ave. To be frank, I wasn't actually planning on presenting tonight until I heard some chatter behind me, and I was moved to speak. So I'll speak to one thing that this person had talked about, especially food security. I think we all know what's going on in the country right now, the amount of poverty. I mean, we have endless numbers of people, even across our cities here in Niagara, who are camped out on lawns and whatever else. And we seem to think that's an act of kindness, but when people want to have chickens on their own property, to produce a little bit of eggs and feed their family, then all of a sudden it becomes a problem. So if you want to be kind towards people who are, trying to make an honest go of it, perhaps just let them have a couple chickens in their backyard. Because as was stated before, I've lived here my whole life. There's always been chickens in backyards, and there's never been a problem until the town began to grow. And then all these problems started arising. So I don't know if it's the backyard chickens that are the problem. We had a beautiful siren here. This is a little bit off the cuff. We had a siren, that's gone. We had fireworks to celebrate being Canadian, that's gone. What else gets taken from us residents? Because mostly fear, anger. You had 3 presentations before mine, 2 of which were very informative and full of fact and knowledge. One was full of fear, mostly due to a flu of some sort. I don't think there's any study that'll conclude that somebody got avian flu from a backyard chicken coop. I'd like to see it if anybody has it, if he wants to present that. But based on other people's fear, a lot has been taken away from myself specifically over the last couple of years. And I'm just really starting to get fed up with it. So let's stick to fact and knowledge and make our decisions based on that and not unfounded fear. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Number 5.
Hi, my name's Esther DeBoer. I live on Rock Street. I am also not really prepared because my husband had an appendicitis attack this weekend.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But kind of what Dwayne just touched on. The economy is hard for young families. With the cost of living going up, groceries, all people want is to provide a little bit of cost savings wherever they can. And for my husband and myself, it has been a... Sorry, I wasn't hoping to get emotional like this. When we moved, we were leery about getting chickens because we knew it was technically against the bylaw and we didn't want to break the law. But we heard that the previous owner had chickens. So we talked to our neighbors around us, the ones that backed to us, kitty corner, and on each side, and we're like, do you have an issue with us getting chickens? They all said, no, just no roosters. We said, perfectly fine, we weren't planning on roosters. We also don't want to be waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to croak all the cockle-doodle-doo. And we ended up getting them, and we have noticed a savings on our grocery bills. We have noticed a decrease, actually, the neighbors too, they all have commented on the decrease of the mice since we have gotten chickens in our neighborhood. I have seen our chickens snap flies right out of the air. I have seen them kill ticks in our backyard from getting on our kids. It is so beneficial, and I have friends who have chickens for their kids because it helps their children's anxiety and other issues as well, to calm them down and give them peace. And my biggest concern with the bylaw is not it's the sizes of the lots. You're asking an astronomical amount at 1.2 acres, and then it has to be a rural location or agricultural. There are lots of people in town with good enough sized lots. And I have a brother who is a chicken farmer, and I know the biosecurity measures that they have to. He is not allowed to have, even though he has broilers, breeders, he is not allowed to have chickens that lay on the property because there is a biosecurity issue. He would love to have egg layers, but he can't. And if people in town, I understand that you also don't want them selling eggs and having a huge operation, totally get that. We currently have 6 chickens, and the only people in our family who eat eggs is my husband, myself, and our one child. Our other child does not like eggs, and he can't eat them right now. Honestly, we maybe get an extra dozen once every 2 weeks from our 6 chickens, and that's really only feeding 3 people. I know that, so even the quantity of how little, like 4 chickens on 1.2 acres, I don't think that's adequate. And if you read the bylaws, you're allowed rabbits. What are people going to do with rabbits? They're going to skin them and eat them if they're from the country. And like that's to me, when we had rabbits, what we always did growing up on the farm. And you're allowed rabbits on a 4x100 lot, and yet you're not allowed chickens to lay a few eggs for yourself. Not slaughtering on the property in town, totally understandable. But like, you get all these people from the city and they're moving into town. I'm sorry, if they want life in the city, they should have stayed in the city where they came from. And you come to the country, you gotta expect smell, you gotta expect that it's going to stink, and it's not necessarily because of your neighbor who's got a few chickens in their backyard that they're using every little piece, getting rid of their household waste and feeding it to their chickens. We have absolutely no green garbage beyond potato peels that go and onion peels because I can't feed those to my chickens. All my other household waste is redirected out of the greens system and given straight to my chickens. And my manure, I actually right away turn into my vegetable garden and I use it to fertilize my vegetable garden. I have never had an issue with any of the neighbors complaining about stink. I've asked them about stink. In fact, my extra eggs I happen to give occasionally to my neighbors around us just as a thank you. And they appreciate it as well. And when they're short on eggs, they're like, hey, can we go help ourselves to a few eggs? No problem. And that's the neighborliness that small towns are known for. And that's how it should remain. And because there's a few squawking people, I think this whole issue is a little over the top. And that we shouldn't even necessarily be having an issue with people having chickens in their backyard. What was something else I wanted to touch on? The lot sizes. Chicken, the avian flu and such. I know from my own experience with my brother and talking with him about that too, and he said it's never the backyard chickens that have one or two chickens that the issue is. It's when people cross between chickens to chickens to chickens, and most of the issues start in the actual facility where they hatch, like the hatcheries and stuff like that. That's where lots of the issues are gone back to. And if we want to talk about smell, all my neighbors around me smoke pot. I personally detest the smell, and I can't spend a day in the summer outside in my backyard without the smell of pot. And you don't see me saying, I'd like a bylaw against people smoking marijuana outside, because people can do what they want in their backyards. And as long as the people are taking proper care of their pets, I see, or their chickens in this case, I see no reason for it to affect other people. Also, if it is possible, I would like to see the results posted from the town survey, if that is possible, because I think there is a whole lot of people who are more okay with backyard chickens than those are who are not. That was my only thing.
Okay, perfect. Now, I'm going to go to the clerk for a second, because I'm not too sure which survey you're referring to.
Back in January, February.
Was it the one that we had on the social, was it?
From January to March.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that was done through the website? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So,
I'd like to see those posted and made available to see
okay, I'm
how
sure-
that's.
were those never posted in a previous report?
Through the chair, maybe to planning staff. I'm not sure if those were posted publicly or if those were for internal steering when we were discussing the bylaw proposition. Perhaps the director may remember. Off the top of my head, I don't remember if that was published or not.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't recall the results being published, but we can certainly speak to Beth tomorrow to investigate that.
So maybe that can come back at the following meeting whenever we have a report that actually comes before council.
Okay,
So-
thank you very
But
much.
also feel free to follow up with staff too in the next couple weeks or so, if not sooner, just to inquire, because if they're able to share that, I'm sure they also would be
Okay.
able to share that to you.
Thank you.
No, well, thank you. Okay, so that's all I have for my list here. I'm gonna go to IT just to see if anybody online that's present wishes to speak to this. If you're online, just raise your hand with the virtual Zoom. If not, no worries. Okay, and then not seeing any, before I go to committee and we missed this opportunity, that was just the list here. If you haven't spoken already, is there anybody else that has something to state? Because this will likely be one of the only times you'll have to speak to this particular bylaw at this time. Not see or hear anything. And then, so I know your hand was back up for a second time. Is it just a brief statement? Because technically you've already been given your time.
It's actually just a response.
So we're not gonna go, if you have a response, you can follow up with staff afterwards. This isn't a debate between difference of opinion.
It's not that at all. It's factual.
And then that part, I'm not too concerned about that. What it is I can't let people, because then someone else puts their hands up and wants to provide their facts. If you have something else that you haven't already addressed because you were given your time, you can reach out to staff and provide that information. Or if you have it on you, you can provide it with the clerk before the end of the meeting. The minute,
Regarding coyotes and hunting.
and that's fine. And then follow up with the clerk before the end of the meeting. If you have it printed, or do you just?
No.
Okay, that's fine. So then he can give you his email, and then you can send that to him as well. That can be included in the report. So I just have to make sure this doesn't turn into a bigger debate than it needs to. Absolutely, and that would be helpful. So if that can, I'll have her follow up with you afterwards. Perfect. At this point, not seeing anything else from the gallery or the virtual, I'll go to members of committee. So I do have to read this. Okay. Give me a second here. All right, so do any members of the committee have any oral or written submissions on the proposed zoning bylaw and animal control bylaw amendments? Please note that members of the committee must make their comments now, as the LLT may not consider comments made at any other council and or committee meeting. So members of the committee, do we have any? I have Mayor Ganan, and yeah, Mayor Ganan. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to point out when you're talking about setbacks that maybe staff, before we come back with a recommendation report, need to look at what's going on. I do know that Pelham wasn't mentioned, but Pelham does say an acre or more. And their setbacks are at least 5 meters from interior lot lines and a minimum of 10 meters from rear lot lines. And of course, we're not looking at something nearly as restrictive as that. And Niagara Falls, I'm surprised about the 50 by 75 foot lot, but it may be where it's located on those lots because their interior setbacks are close to 5 meters or 15 feet from their neighbors' lines, and the rear setback is 8 meters from the lot line. So I think before we settle on whatever it's supposed to be, we may, that might be the answer in terms of protecting what the neighbors' rights are. No matter where this lands, people need to be able to not have it close to their backyard neighbor or their side neighbor on either side. And so looking at what those setbacks are moving forward might be something for our staff to look at more carefully in terms of where we end up settling on something like that. Thank you.
Perfect. So then I have Councillor Broderick and then Councillor Chichak and then Councillor Trebetta.
Thank you very much, through you, Chair, to the Planning Department, perhaps Susan or Brian. I had a question in regards to the wording around rollout, and if you as a department have determined at all what that might look like when you say that this bylaw will be used as a rollout.
Sure. Mr. Chair, to address the comment, essentially this is, I guess, the first attempt or approach to see how the allowance for backyard chickens will be in terms of these smaller lots, and dependent upon the success, maybe there's another opportunity for staff to re-examine maybe some smaller parcels, that being in Smithville urban areas, unless my colleagues have something else to add.
Mr. Director.
The only thing to add through you, Mr. Chair, is I guess we're trying to start with something that we think is manageable from an enforcement perspective. That's one of the lenses that we've used as we've drafted the material, is trying to come up with something that we feel doesn't put a major strain on the resources of the bylaw department. And having said that, the rollout concept, I guess, is, if it seems to work well and people follow the rules and cooperate and participate with the rules, then that would potentially open the door to other areas, so long as the burden is not excessive to the township. That's kind of the view we've taken. We haven't committed to anything in terms of recommendations, but we thought we'd start with something manageable and see how it goes from there.
So through you, Chair, to the Director, I think that's, and may I also comment that, kudos to your department. You did a fantastic job on the report. I mean, it's very encompassing and lots of great information, and I'm sure it was a lot of work. Going back to that rollout concept, I think that that's a great idea, and perhaps maybe timelines could be connected to it so that there could be better an information flow to the community as to what you're thinking would be a time when this would come back to be reevaluated, so that people who are anxious for this in their community or their lot size that doesn't meet the what may be the eventual lot size that it's approved, will know that in this X amount of time, there may be a reevaluation.
Sorry, seems like this mic is really tough tonight. Through you, Mr. Chair, we can certainly build some concepts around that into our recommendation report when that comes forward. But certainly we'd be probably seeking guidance from council on that, in that regard as well.
And one last comment, just a comment. When I hear the 1.2 acre minimum right now, I know living in the rural area that many properties are 1 acre because of when they've been severed at 1 acre, which would exclude a lot of my neighbors, that's for sure. So I just wanted to make that comment around the 1 versus the 1.2. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's a common comment that's come up a few times. I think in our rounding efforts, we rounded the wrong way, and we should have rounded down to include 1 acre in the numbers. So that's certainly something that's on staff's radar already.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor, oh, sorry, are you going before Councillor Chichek?
Just very quickly, if I go back to that, back to Pelham again, they didn't determine inside or outside of town, they just determined the size, which was 1 acre or more. And that took away whether you're in town and happen to have a very large lot, or whether you're outside and have an only 1 acre lot. So I think there's room to sort of tweak this and look at it and still come up with something that works. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Councillor Chichek?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there are at least 2 opinions or positions on this, and I'm sorry to hear that there are some areas of the town that have already got, or township, that have already got angst or anger about this from the opposing views. I hope that we can listen to all sides of this and come up with amendments or various ways to have an outcome that won't cause long-term hardship. And some of my colleagues ahead of me have already mentioned some of the things that I wanted to speak about, and I have a couple of questions of our staff, and that is, just for clarity's sake, a number of people have asked me that on a typical farm property, which might be 18 acres or 100 acres, the house area is zoned, is rated differently on your taxes, and they worry that that might be under 1 acre and that they too would be excluded. But rating for taxes versus zone for usages is 2 different things, and I just want us to make that clear tonight, because I haven't had this many people visit me since Halloween.
So through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Chichok and I had this discussion this afternoon. The zoning of an agricultural parcel is a straight agricultural zone, and so the restrictions around the number of livestock there in the agricultural area basically relate to nutrient management requirements and separation distance requirements and things of that nature in terms of scale and number of commodity, as well as the quota system and what is permitted through that process. The zoning does not identify a separate zoning around the house. That is done simply for taxation purposes. And I think usually the rule of thumb is that 1 acre plus the house is assessed at 1 rate, and then the remainder of the agricultural land is assessed at, I think, 1/4 of that value or something along that line. So that distinction is not a zoning distinction, it's a taxation piece of the puzzle.
Right. Thank you. Now, to proceed forward on this, I think I understand that 1.2 acres ended up being a target that perhaps rounded up versus rounded down. And no matter where we land today, there will be houses within the existing urban area, whether we look out beyond what was traditionally Smithville or Wellingport or someplace like that, there will still be houses that qualify. So it will not eliminate all chickens. And I don't know whether or not asking staff to say, okay, what would it be if it was 0.9? How many more would that add? Or whether we know at 0.75 how many we would have. So what the right number is to build on where Councillor Bradrick and others have spoken to, I think we need to come up with something that's very, very useful and not something that is just draconian to the point where it just came off the wall. So I too would question the 1.2 and suggest that if we take into consideration some other things, we might not have as many people upset, because people that are in the new areas of the expanded Smithville do not have zoning yet, and in fact could establish chickens in a property. And if we said, well, you're grandfathered if you had them before December 31st, or if their properties are currently 1.4 acres or 1 acre or 0.9, I still don't think we would eliminate all of the frustration that was there. So I'd like to see something that took into account something the mayor brought out, which was the talking about the setbacks, coming into looking at the number of chickens, but a size of lot, but also the setbacks from property lines on the side and on the back, and perhaps a closer proximity to the actual house that was buildings that have got that house. Because how are we going to police it? And how are we going to have people who are going out and say proper cleanup? Well, if it's closer to the buildings that the people who live there have, maybe there will be an understanding that the best of care is going to be given to the clean out of waste, the collection of eggs, the regular clean out of the coop. I'm looking at definitions now, and various other things that make it acceptable to abutting neighbors. And if the noise doesn't keep the people in the house up, maybe there isn't enough noise to travel across to the abutting neighbors. So that worries me. Except that, by the way, I also have a question about, can we have a list of the municipalities that were researched? Because we don't have that information. The mayor's given us a few. We've heard a few, and there has been comment made about getting results from the survey. I'd like to make sure that ahead of agenda review and ahead of this coming back, that council be given both the results of the survey and the results of, pardon me, who was questioned, just so that we can have a fulsome understanding and not come to the meeting and then find out, uh-oh, we didn't know that. So as much as we can, if we could have that as soon as possible, rather than somewhere attached to the next report. I truly like the idea of the setback from the lot lines and closer to the individual property that is having the chickens, because if they can't find fault with the issue, we may not be able to send someone out as quickly as we can, and at least there might be someone who realizes there needs to be maintenance done on the chickens. I do want to make one point, and that is that several people who have chickens have come to me and said, whoa, we have food security, we want to have chickens. I understand all that, Mr. Chair, and through you, what I want to say is that I asked every one of them what it costs to generate a dozen eggs. And they all indicated that it may not always be the cost, but food security and hearing about this is a way for us to have food on our lands. These people are saying, the people that have asked me about the ability to keep chickens on their land say that it costs approximately $5 a dozen to get eggs from domestically kept chickens. So it may not always be the cost that is driving people to have this, and it may not be the food security. It may be the quality, or it may be the integrity of knowing where your food comes from that we have to also understand. but I looked in one of the grocery stores this week had 18 eggs on for $4.69. So I'm just saying, it can't always just be the cost, if that's what people are coming for. Food security, I think if you're looking for quality or some other element, we can talk about that. But it barely is, you can't be considered to be cheaper than the store. So that was just something I wanted to bring up, and I think that would be all. Oh, my last question is, our bylaw or the report indicates that we're proposing a gradual rollout of the permissions. What would the future steps be? And what would be achieved prior to moving to the next step? I think would be important for us to know. I think Councillor Bradrick touched on that, but I want to make it real clear. It says a gradual rollout. That means they're future rollouts. So what would we do to get to the next step, and what would the next step look like? I know we're still trying to figure out what the first step should be, but I do want to make sure that we have, if we plan on having next steps, we'll evaluate it in 6 months, a year. I don't know, when we've had 5 violations, whatever it is that the criteria will be to generate next steps, I'd really like to know more about that. And I'm done, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Trombetta?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good dialogue with my colleagues around the horseshoe here. Some of them made some good points, as well as some of the people in the gallery made some good points. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the director or manager, I still don't see why this bylaw should be applicable to the rural areas. Some of the properties are just sometimes, some of them can be a little bit under 1 acre, but very close to it, so that's where that number kind of, we see that 1.2, it needs to be adjusted, so I need that obviously as comments. You hear presentations from both sides, you know, you see their points on both sides. You know, the people that are obviously coming today are usually the responsible chicken owners. You know, they talk about having our $4,000 or $5,000 coops, which are very responsible, let's be honest. But the problem I think we're going to have as municipalities, how do we deal with the irresponsible chicken owners is my concern. Those people that have 4 or 5 that don't attend to them. I've been to chicken coops where the sawdust or the shavings has been changed weekly and it smells like wood shavings. It's been great. I've walked through them. Little bigger size ones in smaller areas. They're nice. But what do we do with the people that are irresponsible? The people that don't attend to them? We do not have the resources or the bylaw enforcement to attend to all these. So I hope staff can come up with something. Again, nothing to take away from someone having chickens or eggs, because if they're responsible and they take care of their property and they maintain that chicken coop and it's clean and they maintain the birds and they're in a I'm being honest, a $4,000 or $5,000 coop is a very hotel of a coop. There's no doubt. I'm just saying, but those irresponsible owners, you know, we do have rented properties. We do have people with not so much income where they're just going to throw 10 chickens or 5 chickens out and don't get, they're not responsible. And then what happens with non-responsible, and I've seen chickens in the rural areas that not responsible, it does attract rodents, as in rats, and then we get infestation, and then we have neighbors calling and all these things. So those are my concerns. How do we, as a community, and the people in the gallery and us as council, we all work together, how do we come up to deal with the responsible and the irresponsible? And I hope that through you, Mr. Chair, that staff can come up with some idea to come or give us some sort of feedback into managing that. So it's good presentations on both sides, but I do have those concerns, the responsible versus the irresponsible, and how we're going to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So, Councillor Rayner, do you have, just to go to you, you're the last member besides myself to ask
Well, I
questions?
guess I understand the pros and cons to all of it. I mean, I was born and raised in downtown Hamilton in the 50s, and 3 doors down, there were Plymouth Rock chickens on the front lawn on Charlton Avenue. And the guy had chickens for years in the back, but once in a while he got to the front. And this is in the city, but this was in the 50s. I also have a concern about the 1.2 acres. I think it should be smaller. But the other thing is, I used to have chickens. I did have the Palace with the controls on it, that it would automatically, the lights would go on in the morning, and I even did everything myself, and I varnished it and everything, and everything was just gorgeous. And then one morning, July the 29th at 11 o'clock in the morning, I lost all my birds. Because I free-ranged them and I enjoyed watching them around, and my woodlot was 400 yards from the house. And the coyotes came out of the soybean, which was 3 feet high in July, and took all my birds, and all I had was little piles of feathers. It was probably the most disheartening thing I've ever experienced. There was nothing I could do. My wife said to me, they're making a lot of noise outside. I said, oh, it's just a hen laying an egg. They like to brag about it for a couple minutes. But then I thought, maybe there's more to it. So I go in the back and I look out the window, and all I see is little circles of feathers on my lawn where my birds used to be. And it really bothered me. And what I can see by watching the news and everything on Channel 11, there's a lot of coyotes coming into town now, and they will come in for the chickens. I can assure you that, because they can smell them a mile away. So there's pros and cons to that. It will attract the coyotes into town, which would probably take less pressure and take pressure away from the rural people who are getting attacked by them. But we have hunting laws out in the country, and we can go after the coyotes, but you really can't do that in town. So I got mixed feelings about that. I mean, the maximum is 4 birds, that's fine. I'm glad there's no roosters, because that's the last thing you need is to listen to that. And it doesn't stop them from laying an egg just because there's no roosters. So thank goodness for that issue. They are carnivores by nature. They will attack, kill, and eat mice. They will actually kill each other given the opportunity. They're very vicious. They can be very aggressive, and it's just their nature. But by the same token, they do keep the area clean. They do look after a lot of the bugs and all the stuff, and you will never have mice around a chicken coop. So there are pros and cons to it. I don't know. I enjoyed them. I liked them when I had them. But it was very disheartening to lose them all. So, and the only thing, like I say, the biggest concern I got is the fact that it will attract what people are experiencing in the big city, and that's the coyotes coming into town. And once that happens, you could really get into a lot of situations that you wish you never created. Right now, they're just out in the woods and they howl all night. I hear them just about every night. But if they get in the city, they could cause some serious, especially with children. I would be very concerned about attracting them into town.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, just turn your mic off. So I'll finish things off. So I guess I've got a few questions here. I guess my first question for staff, so to you, Mr. Director, what is the, I wrote down some notes, if somebody were to have it, so whatever, I guess the first thing is, this is our first stab, our first step at a bylaw to even permit this legally within the areas that we've identified here. So this bylaw, and I think I know the answer to this, but this bylaw specifically speaks to the land itself. So if someone were to keep it internally, so inside their household or inside a dwelling, does this bylaw touch that, or is that more of a human rights issue?
That's a very interesting question, Mr. Chair. Zoning is land use based, so I think the reality is if the chickens are not necessarily an outdoor venture, it would be very difficult to enforce. However, things like dogs are regulated through the animal control bylaw and the zoning bylaw as well. So I'd have to ponder that one a little bit to see exactly how that would all fit together. I think the reality is that there's still a land use component to it, even if they're indoors. That's kind of my gut reaction. But let me ponder that if you don't mind, sir.
Okay. And so I guess the other question, or at least sort of, is enforceability. But I think what is, if we could, and maybe it's less of a question, but more of an inquiry to look into, could there be a special exemption? And I'm speaking specifically to, nobody has necessarily, not many people I'm sure have a perfectly equal, exactly 1 acre lot. If they're a hair under, a hair over, is that something that could be considered maybe in the next round or at the recommendation report, if there's a process that we could have in place for those unique situations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the one thing I did want to get on the floor, and I appreciate the fact that you've raised it, discussions I had had with Councillor Trombetta outside of this meeting tonight had suggested perhaps an area closer to 3/4 of an acre. So I wanted to confirm if that was in fact what his thought was and get that on the record if that is in fact his thought. So it's part of the public process. And certainly the variance process would apply that you could ask for a variance in certain circumstances to something different as well.
Okay. Perfect. Well, as we heard tonight, there's a gentleman that mentioned something about fireworks, and we also have a special exemption process for that when fireworks fall on a day that's not already permitted. And so I want to make sure that if we have an opportunity to provide that information can be out there to maybe correct any misunderstanding of what some of those rules are, what it offers people. I get in the general sense, this is new to our community. And so this is staff's first real attempt at trying to figure out how this would fit. And, from a reliever, you don't really want to, jump headfirst into the pool without making sure there's enough water in there for you. And so I don't think what you put here before us is unreasonable by any means. I certainly think it's a great first step, and hopefully we can build on this. I think it's going to be a difficult conversation as we go further down this road, because obviously there's a huge difference in opinion on what they want to see versus what other people want to see, and hopefully we can find a happy medium. I don't think we're going to make everybody happy. I feel like there's a hard line on each side, and hopefully we can make some ground in the middle. But for a first attempt at what this could look like, I think this is going to find us a little bit of connection in between. I guess the other thing I like to see in the follow report is not just the some of the information. I love to know the specifics of the survey as well, and not just percentages. I like to actually have the specifics of actually how many people participated. Was it 5 people? Was it 50 people? Historically, we have a really tough time getting majority of the community to actually participate in a survey, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's less than 100 people, if not less than a couple dozen people that participated in that survey. So I want to make sure we have all the information when that comes forward, so that actually shows a true reflection of how many people engage versus what the actual average. If we have 5 or 6 people, that certainly does not represent the will of the community. And then I guess there's another question I had that was, I think Councillor Bradrick covered the first part with the distance there. So I guess I'll go back to Councillor Trombetta, just primarily because the director asked for it to be on the record, if that 3/4 is kind of what you were inquiring about, and if that's something you like in consideration.
My rural constituents, my rural area that I've lived my whole life, I think any properties that are already created, some back in the day were 3/4 of an acre property, should be grandfathered, that those properties, if anything. I'm not trying to say that if new properties are created, I'm saying the grandfathered properties that people have in the rural area, some of them are 3/4, not all are an acre, and that's my concern.
Yeah.
So some are a 3/4 acre that surrounds 100 acres. It's just one house that's 3/4 that surrounds 100 acres. So some of them do have chicken coops in the rural area. So how do if we have a bylaw that passes at 1.2, that exempts that property, which it shouldn't really, because again, they have 100 acres behind them. There's nobody around. So, that's what I'm trying to see, right? So if we can, see what they can for the rural area. Again, the urban area is a whole different discussion, like we said, which hopefully the staff comes back and kind of gives us some ideas on how we're going to manage that, if that does get managed. So.
Perfect. And then I guess the last thing I was going to mention too, more echoing the timeline, maybe we can have whatever ends up coming back as the final recommendation, we can have an estimated timeline of when this can be reviewed. I'm not certainly looking for weeks, maybe it's a year or 2 or more, but I think it's important that, that as much as we do with our regular housekeeping items in terms of adjusting the bylaws and getting them, in line with the provincial mandate and the provincial regulations, that we kind of do the same locally here to make sure that whatever decision it lands on, it's the appropriate one, and that there's a review done to ensure that what we put forward is actually appropriate. And and other than that, that's pretty much all I have to say. So I will move things forward. So I do have to remind that tonight is only a technical report, so council will not be voting on the decision to implement this. That will come either in November or December. I'm under the impression it will come before the end of the year. Tonight is just a vote to send this back to staff to review, which is done through a technical report. So that's being considered by committee this evening. And please be advised that once committee or council has made a decision with respect to that zoning bylaw, animal control bylaw amendment, if approved by council, a notice of its passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, please ensure you email the clerk, Justin Palov, at jpalov@westlincoln.ca. So again, before you leave here, if you wish to be informed or you want to have a follow-up when that next meeting is going to be, this is the time to write that email down, or just reach out to the clerk before you leave and provide your information, because that way you can be included on the next round of conversations when that takes place. And then lastly, I will adjourn this meeting with respect to this proposed zoning bylaw and animal control bylaw amendments. It's concluded the hour of 8:13. We will go forward with the rest of our meeting. Thank you guys very much for those who participated. Thank you very much for being respectful towards each other. And yeah, we hope to see you guys at a future meeting there. And have a wonderful evening for those who have other plans to have to get somewhere. At this point, we'll just give 2 minutes to let the gallery clear, and we'll come right back. Perfect. Okay, thank you. Welcome back. We're going to move forward with the rest of the items on the agenda. So at this point, I got to look around committee to see if there's any changes in orders of items on the agenda. Not seeing any. So appointments, I believe we don't have any. Nothing showing up on my side here. Request to address items on the agenda. So this is now for anybody who's either still online with us or in the gallery. If you wish to address a specific item on the agenda, this is your time now to do so. You give them 5 minutes, and you can ask any question or provide any feedback on any other item on the agenda. Not seeing anyone put their hands up too quickly. I'll go to IT here to see if anybody online. Nope, everyone kind of left there, so that's makes things easier. We have no consent agenda items, so that now brings me to communications. So we have a couple communication items, and I will read them once my screen opens this up here. Oh, hold on. I think eScribe just 1 second. It just went to sleep on me. So just give me 1 quick second. Nothing like. All right, sorry about that. The computer had a different plan. Okay, let's try this again. I don't know if it's just, so it doesn't want to work for me. So do you have yours in front of you? Can I just, hold on. Let's try this one more time. Maybe I just won't double, actually, you know what? I think I have this one here. So just, I'll read this, and then our clerk will just let me know if whatever I read was incorrect. So I'm just going to go with what we have on the website. All right, so item P3924, request for fireworks display at 5267 Echo Road, October 19, 2024, and the recommendation is that request received from Rebecca Vergateveen. Did I say that right? Pardon? Vergateveen, sorry. I should know how to say that name. It's a recognized name in the community, for Red Boss Pyrotechnicians, Inc., to host fireworks display on October 19, 2024, 10 p.m. at 5267 Echo Road be approved. Subject to the fire chief providing approval and submission of appropriate insurance coverage for the event, and that this recommendation be and is hereby approved prior to ratification of council. So I need a mover. I have Councillor Chichek and Mayor Ganan as the seconder. Any questions or comments? I have Councillor Rayner.
Is all the public invited?
I'm
It
sure
seems
from
very
afar.
professional with Red Boss Pyrotechnics. You wouldn't want to miss this show.
I'm sure from afar you're probably covered. Any other members of council or committee? So we're good? Okay, so I'll go to our clerk to bring up the vote before us. Oh, all right, my thing's not going to come up, so. Is it? Yeah, I'll try to open mine in the meantime, but
Nothing.
it might just be one of those nights. We might just have to go old school with it if it doesn't work. We'll just see. Sometimes it's the. Maybe it's because I'm not logged in. I just keep signing off. Okay. All right, so I will by a show of hands, I'll call the vote myself. All those in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. You good? Okay, so now we're going to move to item P4024. It is a noise exemption for an event happening on October 18th, day before the other one, 2024 at 8412 South Chippewa Road, and that the recommendation is that the correspondence from Mr. Jesse Knuth, I'm having a rough night with pronouncing people's names, my apologies, received September 30th, 2024, requesting exemption from the provisions of the Township's Noise Bylaw 2013-50 in order to hold an indoor event at 8412 South Chippewa Road on October 18th, 2024, being specifically from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. be received and supported. And that Jesse be required to advise all surrounding property owners within 200 meters of 8412 South Chippewa Road being held on this property, and that a copy of this resolution being forwarded to the Niagara Regional Police, and that this recommendation be and is hereby approved prior to ratification of council. So if I can get a mover and seconder. Councillor Trombetta, Councillor Braderick, any questions or comments? Councillor Chichak?
This is just an exemption of the noise bylaw. So the fact that there's 200 people or 2,000 people, we have no jurisdiction over that. Just the noise bylaw being vacated. Okay.
And any other members of committee? So then I have a question to the clerk. Is this written as a staff report, or is this provided by the resident? Like this almost is written to look like, 'cause I've seen number 1, 2, there's some odd things to this, but it also half looks like a staff recommendation.
Through the chair to the rest of council, so this is the typical resolution that does come from the noise bylaw exemptions. There is pretty standard language that outlines what is an exemption and how we write that as staff, as recommending to council. It's not a staff report. It doesn't come from a staff report. It comes from somebody requesting me specifically in the clerk's department for an exemption to it, and then my process is to put it in front of council as a recommendation.
Okay, so my question to you, not too long ago, not even, I don't know, what was it, a month or two ago, we had a similar request. Could you refresh my memory of what council agreed to at that time, so there's some continuity and consistency? So we had somebody request, I think it was to go like 3 in the morning, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't remember, was it 2 that we settled on? I thought it was 1, right? It was 1 PM?
So through the chair to the rest of council, so this was the request from the individual in terms of the timeline. The previous request was for, I believe it was 3 AM. Council did not wish to grant that and lowered it to 1. It isn't within the same purview of this council to lower this one from 2 AM to even lower. However, this was the requested timeline outside of the bylaw. So this is the exemption 2, and these are the times that he is requesting to be exempt from.
Okay, because I think we just had that the other month. My opinion would be to maintain some consistency and fairness. So I can't bring it forward, but if a member of committee can, because I'm chair. Okay, so I have Councillor Rayner's bringing forward that.
I split it up 3 different times last
Pardon
time,
me?
too, and I split it up 3 different times too last time.
Did
so.
you? All right, it came to your meeting?
No.
Oh.
Split it up though.
Okay. So Councillor Rayner moves one to the 1 PM, the friendly amendment, I guess?
So through the chair to the rest of council, I'll take this as a friendly amendment to coincide with the previous decision from council. It appears this way simply because this was the request made.
Okay.
And now I have another question if you need any time back.
But hold on, we need a seconder though. So can I get
As a
Councillor
friendly amendment, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
All
need
right.
a second. That's why.
making it? Okay, so now Councillor Chichak.
Does it matter anything that this is an indoor event and that one was an outdoor event?
Through the chair to the councillor, no. Through the exemption of the noise bylaw, it is simply just an exemption from the time periods. It was just noted from the person that he is holding an indoor event.
Okay.
I think I've broken that bylaw several times at my house. I want to. We're up
Yes, we missed
beyond
the
1
invite.
o'clock in the morning. The only concern I would have is we're worried about precedent being treated differently, and that was an all outside event, and this is an indoor. So I just wondered if we really did want to move it back from 2, but I'll go with the flow.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with Councillor Chichak there. It is an indoor event. The other one was a wedding that was outside, I think it was, which was was the other issue, I think, last time that came to us. I think, it is colder now. Guaranteed it's going to be indoor, right? So when's the date that
It's coming up quick. It's like this weekend,
Yeah.
or Friday.
It is pretty cool, so I'm quite sure it is indoor. A lot of people can't look how cold it is right now, so I'm okay with keeping it at 2 if it's an indoor event. I think it's not going to be so disruptive to neighboring properties, so. Again, 2 different things.
Okay, Councillor, go ahead, Councillor. You just got to turn your mic on.
My only question is, if it's indoor and they're gonna stay indoors
I know.
and the house is insulated, then why are you asking for a noise bylaw? Because nobody should even know this is going on.
Thank you.
So my point is, there's a reason for this, is because this party's gonna have open doors and they're gonna be outside.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why bother doing this? Keep it quiet. Don't say a word.
Through the chair to the rest of council, to answer Councilor Rayner's question, I believe the assumption that there will be loud music playing. This person was just taking the precaution that they know they're going to be noisy during that time period, and they wanted to do their due diligence to their neighbors and to, I guess, their surrounding properties, that they will be noisy on that time, and to avoid wasting township resources like the bylaw and or, NRPS being called. They just wanted to give us a heads up, and then this was the path they chose. They decided to ask for the exemption, so.
So going back again, Mr. Chair, they know that the noise is going to leave the premises, and that's why we're dealing what we're dealing with. So it could be an indoor party, but obviously they have concerns that indoor noise is going to be outside also. So the rules should be the same, is exactly as the clerk said.
Okay. Yep.
Through the chair.
Question or comment?
No, that's it.
Through the chair to the rest of council, so I will leave it to remain the same, is what I am hearing. So it will be the 2 a.m.
No.
Unfriendly amendment?
So you're leaving it at 2, you
2
said?
a.m.
So I think Councilor Rayner's asking for it to be,
Going back to one.
to keep it at 1.
So now it will
Because they're saying
be-
the noise is going to
Now will
leave
be
the
an
premise.
amendment.
So through the chair to the rest of council, and so now it will have to be voted on as an amendment,
Yeah.
considering that the rest of council isn't in total agreement on this. So this will be an amendment. It will need a seconder from another councilor for Councilor Rayner's amendment.
Mr. Chair, didn't we just go back and say we were going to be consistent
So
with the
what
previous
happened
one?
was, we did, so what happened was, there was an assumption based on what was discussed at the time, that it felt like it was consensus. There was consensus that this could be a friendly, but now that the couple of councilors spoken kind of, I guess, to the fact that they aren't one councilor mentioned that they could kind of go either way, the other councilor mentioned that didn't see any problem with it. That has led the clerk to believe that it isn't consensus, so now that friendly amendment now becomes an actual amendment. So your request can still go through, but you just have to now move it, and then if, Councilor Bradrick, are you still going to second that?
For the 1 o'clock?
Yes. Okay, so I have Councilor Bradrick as the seconder. Quite frankly, I'll say, like, I have, I think it's appropriate to keep consistent with what we've just previously done. I know it's great that they're taking the precaution indoors, but there's also nothing stopping them from going outdoors once they have this exemption. So again, this kind of comes into a weird, like, situation where I don't know how you can tell the police, hey, they got to keep it down, as long as they're indoors, and if they're outdoors, they don't have to keep it down. I don't know how that works and how that can kind of like have an effect on how this goes in the next few days. It's really awkward timing, as well as just trying to be fair with what we just passed. So, Councilor?
So, just so you know, Mr. Chair, just like last time, then I will not be supporting the amendment, and they're going to have to split it because it's going to be presented as amended. So you're going to have to split that.
So we'll vote on this we'll have to vote on the amendment, and then you want to split, oh, right, because then when we go to as amended, you want to separate that portion as
Correct,
amended?
and a recorded void afterwards.
Sure. All right, perfect. Okay, you have any other, okay.
No, I just,
So-
Okay.
So through the chair,
No.
Your mic's on. Why? Okay, so go ahead.
so through the chair to the rest of council, so this is an amending motion being brought forward from Councilor Rayner that's seconded by Councilor Bradrick. It won't be in front of you because my e-scribe system is also not working. However, we will do a physical vote. This is an amendment to move that the resolution be amended to reduce the time exemption to 1 a.m. instead of 2 a.m.
So, Councilor Tremetta, you'd asked for a recorded vote. Was this one of them?
Because we don't have our digital thing.
So you want this one as recorded vote and the next one as recorded vote?
Correct, just because we don't have our digital.
That's correct. Okay. So then
Or
you'll
else I
have,
wouldn't have asked.
I'll second that recorded vote.
well, you don't need a seconder for the recorded vote, but we'll, when you're ready, we'll do a recorded vote on the amendment, and then we'll separate and do different recorded votes there.
Okay.
It's just, yeah.
Okay,
You ready?
so the motion on the floor right now is that the resolution be amended to reduce the time exemption to 1 a.m. instead of 2 a.m. That is moved by Councilor Rayner, and it's seconded by Councilor Bradrick, so I'll just need to see hands to either approve or
I
deny
think
this
that's the
resolution.
request for the first recorded vote.
So that would be-
So the amendment on the floor is that it's reducing to 1 a.m., correct?
Yes.
Sorry, Bruce. The amendment on the floor is that's presented by
Yes.
Councilor Rayner, seconded by Councilor Broderick, that it's till 1 a.m.
Yes.
And you need a vote on that, correct, Mr. Clerk?
Yes.
So we can go as a normal vote, and then the final one, we'll do a recorded vote on the separation of the time. Is that okay?
I do
Or you
not
want a
want,
recorded vote for both?
because the problem is, Mr. Chair, it's gonna come as amended. I don't want that split.
And we could still split that then, but right now we just have to vote on this
You
amendment.
can vote on the amendment first. Go ahead.
Okay, we don't have to worry about a recorded vote on the amendment.
No, I requested because our system's
Okay.
not working.
So we're gonna do a recorded vote on the amendment. Okay. All right, the vote's being called. It's
So
gonna be
Counselor
done.
Rayner,
Okay,
4? Yes, okay.
yeah, 1-4.
Counselor Sheetrock.
I do not support.
That's a not support. That's a support. I support.
Do not support.
A second, do not support.
Support.
And,
So the yeas have it.
Support. Okay, so the amendment passes. So now when we go back to vote on the item as amended, Councilor Trebetta is asking for the time part to be separated still?
Correct.
Okay, 'cause he wants to be able to support the rest of it?
I support the function. I
Okay.
do not support
So
the
item
time
one-
change in the function.
So item 1 will be voted on separately, and then items 2, 3, and 4, just how it's written here, will be voted on together.
Again,
And because we're having a little bit of IT troubles here, Justin is just trying to write notes to, when he goes back into the computer after the fact, so that's a little bit of the hold up here.
So, Mr. Chair, excuse me.
Yes.
The first one, number 1, and when it's voted on separately, will be the as amended portion.
Correct. Yeah, and from what I understand,
And then the
that
rest is
also will be a
straightforward.
recorded vote. Or are you fine with it just because he already had the recorded vote?
we already have the
Nothing's gonna
recorded vote.
change.
It's live here now, so that's my
Okay.
stand. I guess.
So we can, okay, so, one second, we just, the
Explain that. Because the event should go on. We're not in favor of the reduced time,
yes.
but I think we have to consider whether we want the event to go on.
No, but through you, Mr. Chair, again, what I wanted removed was the section, just like we did last time, was the section of the timing. I'm in support of the event. I'm not in support of the time change that's requested by council of the event.
Yeah, and I have no problem with that. I think I understand what the counselor said. It's kind of because of how the format of this, when you vote against any of the items that had, because it's as amended, so when you have something already amended, whatever the vote was before, you're not just voting against it on principle,
had
but
this
you're actually
trouble
voting
last
on the
time.
outcome of the vote and how you voted. So it's almost like you're voting against, you're voting against.
And we had this problem, we had to separate it last time when we did this originally, so.
And
it's
that's
just a
fine, I'm
little
just saying
more-
that's part of the clarity that we're seeking here. All right, everyone in the gallery is
did this
scratching
before.
their head, I'm sorry. All right,
So-
so all we're doing, just real simple, is number 1, we're gonna vote on separately.
Yeah, but that has the time exemption.
I know, the councilor's asking to have it voted on separately, let's just vote on that separately, even as amended, and then we'll have this separate vote. That's just being the request, so. It's, yeah.
So through the chair to the rest of council, thank you for this procedural exercise. The first resolution is that the correspondence from Mr. Jesse Newth received September 30th, 2024, requesting exemption from the provisions of the township's noise bylaw 2013-50 in order to hold an indoor event at 8412 South Chippewa Road on October 18th, 2024, being specifically from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m., which is the amended time, be received and supported.
So that
is the first recommendation separated.
Yeah, so we're gonna vote on that.
Okay. Yes, this
As
is the
amended.
amendment.
And again, one more time for the clarity from the counselor, are you fine with a regular vote, or do you want a recorded vote for this
You know
one?
what, it's just, the way, you're right, Mr. Chair, the way
Sorry.
it comes off, it comes off so confusing. It's redundant, so it doesn't matter. Again, we
Okay.
went through this. It's on record how I spoke
Okay,
about the
so you're
party, so
fine
I
with
don't
a
care.
regular vote, okay. So then that being the case, I'll call the question, all those in favor of item number 1? Okay, and that carries as amended, but now we got items 2, 3, and 4.
I'm in favor of the party.
I'm in favor of the party, Counselor.
Yeah, because because he's, again, it's as amended, so it's supporting his opposition in the last vote, so it's as amended.
Leslie Gore once said, it's your party, you can cry if you want.
But not after
It's your ward. You don't want people to have a fun time in your ward.
Next.
Oh, there's still
All right.
more.
So 2, 3, and 4 will be up in a second here.
So through the chair to the rest of council, the rest of the resolution that is divided, this is the second half, that Jesse Newth be required to advise all surrounding property owners within 200 meters of 8412 South Chippewa Road being held on this property, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Niagara Regional Police, and that this recommendation be and is hereby approved prior to ratification of council.
Perfect. So,
I'll need a mover and seconder for that one, though.
so if I can get Mayor Ganan, and I'll just go Councillor Rayner.
And then
And then I'll just call the question. All those in favor? Okay, and that carries unanimously as well. All right. Keeping us on our toes. So now that brings us to staff reports. So the first report's going to be technical report PD 50-2024 backyard chickens, updated information and draft bylaw, file number 1601-02-24. Again, that technical report, PD 50-2024 regarding backyard chickens, updated information draft bylaw, file number 1601-02-24 be received. And that a recommendation report be submitted to a future planning, building, environmental committee once all public and agency comments have been taken into account and a full staff agency review has been completed. And again, for those who are still here, for those who are watching at home, this is a report that is to come down the future. We are just voting specifically on a technical report, which just takes in everything that was discussed tonight, everything staff's received before the meeting and possibly even after the meeting, and they will put that all together and come up with a recommendation at a future meeting. So I need a mover. I got Councillor Broderick, a seconder, Councillor Rayner. At this point, any extra comments? Councillor Rayner?
Just that you had mentioned earlier, Mr. Chair, that you expect this report in November or December?
I was under the impression that this was likely to come back just before the end of the year.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, when talking with the director prior to just getting clarity of what was coming before us, and just trying to give people a timeline of when they can expect to hear that, because that was going to be a question that I thought was going to come out tonight. He felt pretty comfortable in thinking that we can have something before the end of the year. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the tech report? All right, and that carries unanimously as well. That moves us to technical report PD 44-2024. It is the application zoning, well, on this one it says 44, but down here it actually says 42. So it's in two different, it's wrong in two different spots.
So that's the item number for the agenda.
Oh, what did I?
Report number. It
Sorry.
just so happened that
I don't read the item number. I go right to the report number. So that's the confusion. It is 44. The item number. So on the item's P4224, but the report number, the technical report is PD 44-2024. Application for zoning bylaw amendment 739520 Road, Ross Robbins, file number 1601-00424, and it's a recommendation, or not, sorry. That technical report, PD 44-2024, titled Technical Report Application for Zoning Bylaw Amendment at 739520 Road, Ross Robbins, file number 1601-00424, dated October 15, 2024, be received. And that a recommendation report be submitted to a future Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting once a full staff and agency review has been completed. If I can get a mover and seconder, Councillor Trombetta, Councillor Chichuk. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously as well. All right, so item P4324. And a recommendation report, PD 43, a recommendation report, PD 43-2024, application for zoning bylaw amendment at 5447 Regional Road 20, file number 1601-00724, Kathy and William Vitucci. And this recommendation is that a recommendation report, PD 43-2024, titled Application for Zoning Bylaw Amendment for 5447 Regional Road 20, file number 1601-00724, dated October 15, 2024, be received. And that the application for zoning bylaw amendment submitted by William and Kathy Vitucci, owners of 5447 Regional Road 20, be approved in accordance with the attached zoning bylaw amendment with the site-specific regulations, and that no further public meeting is required for the consideration of this bylaw in accordance with section 3417 of the Planning Act. So I have Mayor Ganan as the mover, Councillor Chichuk as the seconder. Any questions or comments at this point? Not seeing any. So again, this is not a tech, this is a rec. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously as well. All right. We're motoring now. Okay. Yeah. All right. So now we're at 4424, but recommendation report is PD 46 2024, the provincial bypass for Highway 20 on south side of Smithville. That recommendation report, PD 46 2020, titled Provincial Bypass for Highway 20 on southwest side of Smithville, dated October 15, 2024, be received. And that the administration be directed to notify the region of Niagara that the Provincial Highway 20 bypass is no longer consistent with the recommendations of the Township of West Lincoln Transportation Master Plan and can therefore now be removed from the affected lands as they are no longer required for future bypass development. So I need a mover and seconder for that. Mayor Ganan, Councillor Broderick. Any questions or comments? Councillor Chichek?
Do staff actually have a larger picture of this? It was really tough to try and see what they were talking about in the reports.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we do. We're trying to bring it up now. So back in 1971, if I may, Mr. Chair, the province put in place the concept of a bypass. And so the red dotted line or I guess purpley pink dotted line that shows on the screen in front of you, looks right up there to me, but anyway, that was what the province identified at that time. It now goes between the Leisureplex and the boundary. In fact, the first few houses off of Town Line Road on Harvest Gate at the time had to get permits from the Ministry of Transportation because they were being built on lots adjacent to land that had an MTO interest on it. That now, as a result of OPA 63, which isn't reflected in this boundary, puts most of this bypass inside the new urban boundary of Smithville. So it's been identified through our through our master transportation plan that it's in the wrong location. And the master transportation plan identifies 3 different options, 2 to the north, 1 to the south, and the one to the south is quite a ways further out now at South Grimsby 8, coming down South Grimsby 8 and around the town from that direction. So this bypass that's been on the books since the 1970s, it's been asked by the landowners group and the landowners in question to be removed for some time. Now that we have the essence of an OPA and urban boundary expansion approval and basically the last bits of OPA 63 in process as well, staff are recommending that now's the right time to tell the region, not the province anymore, but the region, that we have no interest in this bypass so it can be removed from the books and not complicate subdivision development that comes forward at a later date. So this is the better map, or the previous one was the better map. This one shows the new proposals, and my apologies, the map in the report somehow got a little bit convoluted.
Now, any other questions? So I'm seeing option C here. And that's showing it kind of going south, and I thought that was removed from the equation.
Option C comes down South Grimsby 8, and then I don't think we know for sure where it's going to go from there. At this point, the concept was along Town Line Road, but it's anticipated that either A or B are the preferred option.
So then, so why are we keeping, so to you, Mr. Director, why are we keeping this in the equation? Because I know this council had spoken with great concern about that kind of running through a heavily schooled area.
Yeah.
And I think if we keep that in there, is that not sending the region like a potential misunderstanding?
I don't think so. I think, Mr. Chair, what happens is there will be an environmental assessment process. They're working actually on the terms of reference for that process at the regional level right now. And that will do an evaluation and provide public opportunity for comment. And certainly at that point, we can feed in whatever comments we have with respect to any of the options.
Okay. Yeah, because I was under the impression that that was removed from the table. So that's why I'm a little surprised that we're still seeing that here. I thought we were left with option A and B. So, Madam Mayor, am I
So further to what you're saying, Mr. Chair, we did talk about that at various open houses, actually, as we were looking at OPA 63, and sort of looking at what would make most sense. I was quite surprised, actually, when we asked that question before, and the assumption was that somebody further on needed to look at 3 options. But I think if we're going to have a third option, it should not be right through the middle of our downtown area and downtown line. And it should be, if anything, after our meeting on Friday, it should be further outside on Highway 20, coming in from a different angle. So I don't know if it's too late to change that process, but I think it was very loud and clear from some people on Friday that the roundabout, that's too close, to start. So I don't know if we have any more input into that, but certainly.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can certainly take this messaging back to the regional staff resource, Mr. Fraser, and express the thoughts from Friday as well as tonight to him. The catch is, and I need to go back and just double check the wording, but I believe the master servicing plans, including the transportation plans, were all endorsed by this council. I'd have to double check that to see exactly how much specifics we got into on that, but that I think would be this
Chair,
map.
I still have the floor. Part of the concern about that is that each of our delegations to the ministry in regard to the escarpment crossing, the new escarpment crossing, pointed out the preferred route was to the north so that trucks could then connect with the escarpment crossing.
Option A is preferred.
I'm sure that it isn't something that this council actually was in favor of.
I can't speak, through you, Mr. Chair, I can't speak to it with crystal certainty, but I think there was a preference to leave a southerly option just for evaluation purposes. But I know option A is the preferred option, but I can certainly do more investigating tomorrow.
So, yeah, if you could do that, because I have a really hard time actually supporting this, knowing that option C is even on the table. I believe in some of the other stuff that we dealt with even last term, like that was something that was not going to be considered, and you're saying that you wanted to have 3 options, but technically you do have 3 options. You actually have 4 options. You have option A1 and A2, which is technically still count as 2 options. It just splits in how the route goes, and then you have option B, which goes around it and actually connects where option A2 and A1 would actually connect. So we're actually providing with 4 options, not 3. So if that's the case, I would like to see option C removed tonight, and if they come back to us saying we need to provide a southerly option, then I think that would be the appropriate time to have council revisit what that could look like. I would hate to send this forward at this time and then think, okay, well, here's 1, 2, and 3, and they must be okay with it because they brought it to our table, and for whatever reason it ends up in the wrong spot for whatever reason. So that would be my ask, that we can remove that this evening and just you go forward. If you have to go forward with this tonight, go forward with the 2 options that has a 1 and 2 as well.
If I may, Mr. Chair, the report that's on the table is really intending to speak only to the bypass that was put on the books by the Minister of Transportation in the 1970s. So I think it might be more appropriate to deal with that as a separate matter.
Okay, so if we bring a motion tonight to, I think maybe the better solution is we deal with that as it is, and then we bring a motion after the fact, maybe refining this, also supporting that tonight, that option C is not of the will of the community, or at least, sorry, the will of council, and that option A and B and A1 and A2 be prioritized and option C not be considered. If a member of council were to bring that forward to you to share along with the current motion, could that be considered tonight?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think that is fine, in the sense of the fact that there is an endorsement by council and you're seeking to provide some clarity. I think that would be appropriate, yeah.
Perfect. Councillor Chichek?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is exactly why I brought that item forward, because the maps were so small, and I'm not blaming anybody about that, but I was struggling with exactly where the outfalls of this bypass were going to happen. And after hearing the people on Friday, it made perfect sense that we would want to go beyond the current limits of what the community is going to face, to have a bypass dump traffic into the middle of what will then be the town. So I would make that motion, Mr. Chair, at the appropriate time, that we do that, because option C, regardless of when we did it, and regardless of what support we gave it, and regardless of the fact that option A1 or A2 are the ones that are going to be preferred, we need a very clear understanding that option C is not an option to be considered by this council, even if they want to look at the fact we endorsed it back when we didn't have a clear map. I think they're doing confession.
Okay, so I was just confirming with the clerk, we're just figuring out procedurally what was the best avenue to
It's
to
one of
bring that
these new
motion forward.
procedures, yes, I understand.
Correct.
And getting the vote, that not vote, and getting the superseded vote is, I want to make sure that it's very clear
So-
that I want to put a motion on the table that takes C
Yes.
as a not option for this community.
So from my brief discussion with the clerk, there believes that this could also be part of the same resolution, just as an amending component to the resolution that's before us. And so
Read
we'd
it.
still have to vote on your amendment, right? So you'd be moving the amendment, we get a seconder for that, and then that votes, and then the overall resolution would just include that in addition to, so it's not that we have to treat it like a separate item. It would just be treated that what we have before us, item 4424, or PD 2046, whatever, would now add this as almost as an extra item. But, so right now I have you moving the amendment, Mayor Ganan seconding the amendment, and we'll get the clarity and the wording for that in a second here.
So through the chair to the rest of council, just to be clear on what is being removed within the report or within the recommendations from administration. So I have that administration be directed to remove option C from, are we saying?
From,
It's a totally different document? Okay,
so I think we want to remove it, sorry, I'll go to our CEO who might be able to clarify. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to the director, I believe this is being done through an environmental assessment process. Is that correct? And so those
That's correct.
options, I think, are prescribed through the terms of reference. I'm not clear what that terms of reference is saying or if it's been adopted yet, but an environmental assessment follows its own process and makes its own decisions. And so I think if it's the will of council to have this revisited, I think it's a recommendation to the region to revise the terms of, or to consider revising the terms of reference. But where that is in the process at this moment, I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Chair, as I recall the discussion from Friday, they are starting to work on the terms of reference. So it's early in the process, I believe.
So maybe this becomes an opportunity that we're putting forward as an expression of, like, it's a request still.
Council recommends that the terms of reference be amended to remove option C.
So that's what's coming forward then. Okay, so okay, so the clerk's just working on that. Just one second, just let Jesse get caught up and then I'll come to you, Counselor. All right, so I will go to Counselor Rayner. Actually, hold on. Sorry, Counselor Chichuk still had the floor, right? We kind of jumped on. You good? Okay. Counselor Rayner.
Just on a sideline, this provincial bypass for Highway 20, this was brought forward to AMO many times in the past, is it not? I remember previous mayors talking about this and all the rest, and now this has been on the books for 53 years. I want people to understand how fast government works. This has been on the books for 53 years, and now they're deciding to change it because they haven't done anything with it, and now we're moving in another direction. So I don't know how many generations it'll be before somebody finally sees the result, but it's probably not going to be ours.
All right, that's noted. Thank you.
So currently through the chair to the rest of council, the amendment I have on the floor is that administration be directed to request that the terms of reference be amended to remove option C.
Do we have to specify, because the
What was
region?
Is it from the region
Because
specifically?
it's, you're saying it's the region's terms of reference, so we're,
The environmental
For-
assessment, right?
yeah.
For the bypass.
For the bypass, yeah, we have to
bypass,
maybe be
so a bit more
specific to that.
descriptive, yeah.
So as a result of the expanding urban boundaries of the Township of West Lincoln's Smithville area
Yeah.
were asking for this. And 53 years ago, that expansion was not envisioned, or 103 years ago, or whatever you want to say. So these things happen. If you want to expedite it, you don't want it to be in the middle of your main street.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
I think that's what we really want to capture. Okay, it's not that side of town.
All right, so if you could just read that again.
So that administration be directed to request that the Niagara region amend the terms of reference in regards to the environmental assessment to remove option C.
So read that one more again.
So the administration be directed to request that the Niagara region amend the terms of reference in regards to the environmental assessment to remove option C.
Okay, so administrator, I'm not used to hearing administration, usually staff, but that's what you're referring to, our staff?
Yeah, so we are being directed to request that the Niagara region, because we can't direct the Niagara region,
No.
to amend the terms of reference in regards to the environmental assessment to remove option C.
That seem
As a
reasonable?
result of the expanded, I really want to say, Mr. Chairman, that it's as a result of our urban boundary expansions,
Okay.
which have just recently
Just
been,
kinda helps
maybe
set
not
that
even be fully
nail
complete.
deeper.
Right. So we're not putting the cart before the horse.
So, just so I won't read the rest of it, again, to remove option C as a result of our urban boundary expansion.
Sounds good to me. Okay, so if you could just read it one more
Yep.
time for the public?
So this is an amending motion from Councillor Chichok. That administration be directed to request that the Niagara region amend the terms of reference in regards to the environmental assessment to remove option C as a result of our urban boundary expansions.
Perfect, and that was second by Mayor Ganan. Okay, and that's good. Okay, so assuming there's no other questions, I'll call the vote for all those in favor of the amendment. And that carries unanimously.
Okay.
And then
And the
now we'll go
original.
back to the resolution. If I could just have you read it for me, please.
So the original resolution, and this will be carried as amended, that recommendation report PD 46, 2024, titled Provincial Bypass for Highway 20 on southwest side of Smithville, dated October 15th, 2024, be received, and that administration be directed to notify the region of Niagara that the Provincial Highway 20 bypass is no longer consistent with the recommendations of the Township of West Lincoln Transportation Master Plan, and can therefore now be removed from the affected lands as they are no longer lands required for future bypass development. And again, this is including the amendment we just passed.
Perfect. And assuming there's no other questions, I'll call the vote. Do you have a question, Counselor? Okay. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously as well. Excellent. That brings us to item P4524, which is recommendation report PD 49-2024, extension of draft plan approval for Mars Homes, Smithville West, Dunlow Subdivision File Number 2087-18, and Mars Homes Thrive Subdivision File Number 2090-20. So there's a few items here. So, one, that recommendation report PD 49-2024, titled Extension Draft Plan Approval for Smithville West, Dunlow Subdivision File Number 2087-18, and Thrive Subdivision File Number 2090-20, Mars Home Inc., dated October 15th, 2024, be received. And that the draft plan approval for Smithville West Dunlow Subdivision Lot 7, Plan M98, be extended for a period of 2 years to expire on December 17, 2026, subject to conditions included in Schedule C to this report. And that the draft plan approval for Thrive Subdivision Lot 9 of Plan M98 and Part 1 of Plan 30R15792 be extended for a period of 2 years to expire on November 25th, 2026, subject to conditions included in Schedule D to this report. And 4, that the council deem the changes to the conditions of approval found in Schedule C and D to be minor, and that notices of decision to be circulated to relevant agencies and departments for both applications. If I can get a mover and seconder, Mayor Ganan, Councilor Trombetta. Any questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing any, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All right, and opposed? Yeah, we got one opposed, so that carries. All right, so now we have information report, PD 42-2024, number 3, comprehensive zoning bylaw amendment, housekeeping 8, draft bylaw update, and the Item is that information report PD 42, 2024, titled Information Report Number. Oh, it's off my screen here. I don't want to double click my screen here. So I'm missing some stuff here because my screen's not. Yeah, can you pass me that, please? It's just because as soon as I click the screen, the whole thing's going to close on me. Thank you. All right. So we were 10-6. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so information report number 3, comprehensive zoning bylaw amendments, housekeeping 8, draft plan update, dated October 15th, 2024, be received for information, and that administration be directed to finalize the amendments to housekeeping 8 and present the final version for adoption by council. I got Councillor Chichak, any seconder, Councillor Braderick. Questions or comments? Councillor Chichak?
The only comment I have is that I understand that this is the 8th time we've made amendments to our zoning bylaw since 2017 when a entire rewrite of our bylaws, our zoning bylaw was achieved. And I don't find it unusual or unnecessary. And at some point, someone made a comment about how this is the 7th amendment, so we're doing a really good job. Well, we're still finding changes, and as the provincial government decides various things, various times, and rewrites different things, we will see more of this, and we must look at it and the speed at which we are able to do this. But the architect of our zoning bylaw was not our staff, and while they were there and they oversaw the development of it, things will get missed. And so I'm not calling it critical or, in fact, in any way something that should be seen as wrong. I think that we're doing what we have to do, and I would expect that we would make future changes expeditiously to minimize the impact it has as our municipality moves forward. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing any. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously as well. So that brings me to item P4724. It's a recommendation report, PD 47/2024, minor modifications to the Clean Yard bylaw. That recommendation report, PD 47/2024, titled Minor Modifications to the Clean Yard bylaw, dated October 15, 2024, be received. And that an amending bylaw such as the bylaw found on Schedule A to this report be adopted by the Township Council to amend the current Clean Yards bylaw in order to improve the intent and enforcement of Section 2.10, and that a future report be presented to Council to implement the Administrative Monetary Penalty, AMPS, bylaw for ticketing purposes for the enforcement of the Clean Yards and Property Standards bylaw. Mover and seconder. I need Councillor Trombetta, Councillor Chichak. Any extra, Councillor Trombetta, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, can I just you to either or, well, Director Trouble, because it's his report. The sort of setbacks around buildings and stuff I was reading in this, can you just touch on this a bit, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the bylaw as proposed to be amended actually started back when John Bartle was still here as our chief building official. And there was concern that was raised in a couple of different files that he was working with our bylaw officer at the time, Jesse, where the enforcement provisions in the agricultural area were challenged because of the fact that we cannot impact a farmer's ability to farm. And the setback requirement at that time was 100 meters. So the proposal is to actually reduce the setback to 45 meters, but then contain any storage inland from lot lines at the same time. Before it was just a setback off the road. Now it's a setback from the lot lines to put it into some sort of a confined area, either near or behind a barn or behind a fence or a hedge or something of that nature. It's not to take away from the farmer's ability to store equipment that they may need. It's just to contain it so that it looks sort of neat and orderly. That's the goal without jeopardizing farming.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and that's what I thought, because before it was them stringing stuff along lot lines and keeping it there.
Yeah.
And now what we're doing is confining it in an area to clean it up a bit. Perfect.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, no problem. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously as well. And that brings us to item P 4824. It's Information Report PD 39, 2024, New Provincial Planning Statement Overview 2024, and Provincial Transition Recommendation. That Information Report PD 39, 2024 regarding the Recommendation Report, New Provincial Planning Statement Overview 2024, and Provincial Transition Recommendation dated October 15th, 2024 be received. If I can get a mover or a seconder for that. Councillor Chichuk, Mayor Ganam. Any questions or comments? Not hearing any, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And opposed? All right, one opposed, and that carries. That brings us to other business. Any members of the committee have any matters of informative nature they'd like to bring up? Not seeing or hearing any. That we have no new business, no confidential, so I'll adjourn the meeting at 9:12 p.m. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.